fucking scam, mate. It's the biggest fucking scam I've seen in my fucking life. And if I was Satoshi Nakamoto, just like all the other coins, my aim would be get as much of this money and get this fake money in the hands of the world's young, hopeful men. Get them to pay me their real money. You'd be thinking, all you would be thinking is, how can I advertise this? How can I get it out? And I know people will turn around and say,
He hasn't sold it. Well, it's very easy to fucking short sell it. Because if you look at his accounts, he hasn't sold it. Short sell it.
There it fucking is. This needs to stop now.
Their spirits were sunken and low. Their bags weighed more than a ton. There was neither sign nor show when the bull began his run. The shields were shilling wall to wall. The gig was up, they had their fun, and every short got a margin call when the bull began his run. The candle's green came fast and tall. Each wick was bold, quick to stun. His eyes burned red and his horns did more when the bull began his run. Now fortune smiles upon the need. His bags of gold gleam in the sun. The outer stream of his balance sheet, and every bear is left with none. Since the bull began his run.
The charlatan preys upon our fears and insecurities, whispering of a world where survival hinges on conformity and success is measured in material wealth. But we know that the true value of art cannot be quantified by currency or popularity. It is found in the moments of connection and understanding, in the shared humanity that emerges from the canvas, the page, the melody. Therefore, we reject the false promises of easy fortune and fleeting fame. Our commitment is to the enduring legacy of quality and depth, to works that challenge, inspire, and move the human soul.
It's getting ugly real fast out there.
Looking through my Ray-Bans at the world outside, walking slow-mo to a rhythm under neon nights. I got my mind in the gutter and my dreams on the street. I feel alive, alive, and the city don't sleep. My spine is tingling, my spine is tingling, my spine is tingling, my spine is tingling, and it feels so good. And all these emotions from the highs to the lows, or setting fires on my light, dripping, slipping, gold, spinning drunk on the energy, ocean of life. Oh, this city don't sleep. I'm alive, I'm alive. My spine is tingling. My spine is tingling. My spine is tingling. My spine is tingling, and it feels so good. And it feels so good.
Drawing. I'll be drawing here today, and hopefully taking questions. Well, not hopefully. I'll be taking your questions either in the chat. I've got the StreamYard link up if you want to hop on. I sent the link out on Discord, NOSTR, Twitter. So anyone who wants to hop on and ask questions, please feel free to do so. In the meantime, I've got an Andreas Antonopoulos video that I want to be playing. So this, I'll be EFAPing this as I draw, and interrupting the video for any of your questions. So please bring it on. This bit does inspire confidence. Yeah, that's an old Saturday Night Live clip that they were making fun of it. That's why they advertise it as stock market. But it's good to address the worries because, you know, you want to make sure that you understand Bitcoin before you get into it. It's not without its pitfalls. It is the soundest money. It is the best form of money. But you do want to know what you're getting into. You do want to understand it before you get in. I'll try to hop on. Yeah, please do, Omar Glitch. If you want to draw as well, you can do that. If not, that's fine. I'd be happy to have you on. Hey, Animation Overload, how you doing? I'm doing great, man. This is a first stream. I've been wanting to talk Bitcoin a lot, but I have a weekly art stream, but my co-hosts are not all Bitcoiners. Some of them are not interested in the topic at all. And it didn't feel like the right place to talk about it. And it was kind of frustrating to not have any outlet where I could talk Bitcoin. So I figured, let's do something else. This is not going to be a regular scheduled show. It's going to be like an impromptu art stream. I'm inspired by Tank Ferret, a friend of mine, who is kind of like working in the day on his stuff and just streaming along what he's doing. Immortal Rising asks, do you borrow against your Bitcoins to buy altcoins? No, not at all. Altcoins here are called shitcoins. We'll get into that. Altcoins are all a scam. In 2017, when I got in, you discover Bitcoin. You're like, wow, this is great. What else is out there? And then you listen to all their propositions. A lot of them are saying we have innovative technology. We're faster than Bitcoin. We have this that Bitcoin doesn't have. We have that, this, and that. And when you've been in it for a long time, you kind of see through the bullshit and realize they're all scams. They're all centralized scams with VA money coming in and trying to. It's basically like a corporation, right? They're trying to sell you a proposition. They take your money, and then you see the value go down and down and down and never goes back up. Bitcoin is unique in that it kind of has a virgin birth. It has all the properties of gold. It's called sound money for a reason. And we're going to get into that. Omer says, where does my Bitcoin money go? Like, who do I buy Bitcoin from? Who controls the buy and sell of Bitcoin? So you can buy Bitcoin from anybody who has Bitcoin. So if you have friends that have Bitcoin, you can buy it from them. Or if you don't know anybody, you want to go through an exchange, there are exchanges. I will be promoting Bull Bitcoin. They've been supporting my comic book. And I forgot to put that in the chat. I put everything, Omar, like you told me, in the description but I forgot to put the Bull Bitcoin link. I will be adding that at least before the next episode. So yeah, so you want to find an exchange that you trust. You're located in the US, so I'm going to try to get some info on which are the best ones to recommend to my US friends, American friends, because I just know about the Canadian ones. But yeah, you find the first exchange ever was called Mt. Gox, which stood for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange, because they started selling Magic cards. And when Bitcoin came around, they were the first ones to sell Bitcoin. And that worked really, it was very complicated to do back in the day. You had to wire money to Japan, where they were located, and wait for them to get it, clear it, and then you'd have to install the Bitcoin program on your computer. It was very much more complicated back in the day. Thankfully, today, things are simpler. The important thing to note, though, is you don't want to leave your Bitcoin on an exchange. You want to do what's called self-custody, which we'll get into that as well. That just means having your own wallet, whether on a software wallet on your phone, on your computer, or a hardware wallet where the keys are kept offline. That's usually what you do when you upgrade, when you have an important sum of money on your Bitcoin. You'll want to invest in a hardware wallet at some point. So yeah, while we wait for someone to hop in, let's start with the Andreas Antonopoulos presentation here.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. This is my first time in Sweden, and I'm enjoying every moment of it, except for the weather. But other than that, fantastic. It's so good to be at a conference about the internet, because I remember my first internet conference. It was in 1992. There were about 100 people there. All of them were computer scientists or computer science students. And despite the fact that we were telling the entire world that the world was about to change, no one believed us. At least no one believed me, because I was 19 years old and awkward and shy, so that wasn't working so well. But it taught me one thing. It taught me to trust my instincts, because in fact it did change the world. My second book is called The Internet of Money, and the reason for that is because the technology I'm going to talk about today is about to transform the world in equal measure, and will also transform the internet itself. Bitcoin, an invention created on January 3rd, 2009 by an anonymous creator, unleashed as an open source project, built by a community of volunteers, run as a peer-to-peer network, derided, laughed at, ignored for the first 5-6 years. Not so much anymore. People are beginning to pay attention, just like with the internet. Things that were previously unthinkable are now thinkable. People are beginning to notice that this is something more than what they are told. And what are they told? Drug dealers, pornographers, criminals. Guess what? That's what they said at the first conference in 1993 about the internet. They were wrong then, they're wrong now. And every time you meet someone who is a dentist who uses Bitcoin, or a hairdresser who uses Bitcoin, it undermines that silly narrative. Bitcoin is a protocol, and what better stage to talk about a protocol? And the moment you start talking about Bitcoin and thinking about Bitcoin, it brings up a very difficult question. What is money? And most of us, turns out, from all of the conversations I've had with thousands of people around the world, have no idea what money is or how it works. It's one of those technologies that is so deeply embedded in our culture that it has become completely invisible to us. In fact, we don't even need to think about money unless it stops working. Some countries, they realize that it stops working, and then everybody has interesting things to say about what money is. But what is money? At its very basic level, money isn't value. In fact, you use money to get things of value, products or services, but there is no value in the money itself. And money isn't a construct of authority. We seem to think that these days because all of our money comes from certain authoritative sources. Some guy with a crown says that this is your money, it's your money, and that's the authority it comes from. But what if money could be created without authority? What if money could be created simply through use? It turns out that what money really is a language. Money is a language that human beings created to express value to each other. As a language, is one of the fundamental constructs of civilization that allows us to exceed what's known as the Dunbar number. The Dunbar number is the maximum number of individuals who can operate in a tribe on the basis of kinship, of acquaintance. But if you want two tribes to work together, you need some common bond. And these bonds have included culture, language, religion, and yes, money, a fundamental construct that allows us to exceed the scale of a single tribe and engage in commerce with others on a greater scale. And as our money has evolved, it has been able to evolve its scale to allow us to collaborate and engage in commerce on a greater level. But money is also, ironically, a system of control, because controlling money confers great power to those who control it. And as a result, kings and governments have always held a very tight control over money, pretty much like they used to hold over religion for pretty much the same reasons. And now that has changed. On January 3rd, 2009, the world changed because some person created a peer-to-peer protocol, a flat network with no servers, all clients, that is able to express money as a content type. As internet professionals, you may understand what I mean when I say money as a content type. Money that is expressed purely as data that can be transmitted using any communication medium that can convey information. A Bitcoin transaction doesn't need to be transmitted over the Bitcoin network, although that's a convenient way to do it. You could encode it in Skype emojis. You could write it up and put it in a Craigslist ad. You could post it on Facebook in the background of a picture of kittens playing with yarn. Money as pure information on an open network that is simultaneously uncensorable, open to anyone, neutral, and global. There are no borders on this new technology, just like there are no borders on the internet. Everyone can access it because it is not a product. It is not a company. You do not need to register for an account. You simply download the client. And a Bitcoin client is very much like a web browser. It is the user interface that speaks the protocol to other Bitcoin clients out there. And as soon as you download that one application, you can join a global economy. And that global economy is open to anyone of any race, religion, creed, ethnicity, age, anywhere in the world. For most people, this concept hasn't yet quite sunk in. The children born today will not know a world in which banks exist. They will not know a world in which paper money exists any more than many of the young people in our industry today have no idea what the world used to look like before the internet. How many of you here remember libraries and looking up reference cards? Okay, you're over 40, so am I. Gotcha. But the children born today will never drive a car. They'll never have a world without the internet, and they also will never know a world where banks control money, where money is issued only by kings, only by nation states. Money will be an integral protocol of the internet, a content type that can be transmitted by anyone, anywhere. But that's not enough. Let's make it more fun. Every form of money until today has to have a person behind it. Money can only be owned and managed by people, or people together forming an association, a legal fiction called a corporation. Not with Bitcoin. It's a protocol. Autonomous agents can own and manage money themselves. No people required. Imagine a corporation with no directors, no shareholders, no employees, running entirely based on scripted learning, machine learning, or maybe just a few simple heuristic rules that operates autonomously of any human action and can manage budgets in the amounts of billions of dollars. Now, at this point in the audience, we have a split. Some people are thinking, oh no, that sounds terrible. What if it's a virus? What if it's intelligent ransomware that self-propagates and buys Amazon Web Service systems so that it can grow when it's successful? What if it starts running A/B testing on itself by hiring programmers to make itself better? Yeah, all of that's going to happen. But what if it's a charity? What if it's an intelligent charity that can detect the emergence of a natural disaster and automatically and instantaneously divert large funds directly to the people most in need without human intervention? And unlike most charities today, 100% of the funds donated go to those in need. The world is about to change. Self-driving cars? How about self-owning cars? Cars that are not owned by a corporation, cars that are a corporation, that pay for their electricity or gas, maintenance and leasing fees by giving rides to human beings who pay them in cryptocurrencies. Imagine software such as intelligent articles that propagate across the internet as content and expand their reach because people read them. And as a result, they're able to buy more hosting services so they can expand their reach. This is not your grandparents' money. It's not your parents' money. This is money that is fully programmable, scriptable, that has capabilities that can be finely tuned. You can specify who can access it and when, how it can be dispersed. A whole new field has opened up, which is now called smart contracts. This system allows people to program the behavior of entire systems that can also manage money. And money is such a narrow word to describe this, because we use things that kind of look like money all the time, but aren't really money. What about loyalty points, tokens, subway cards, airline miles? What about expression of a fan of Justin Bieber with full access to the catalog of music as a token? What about all of the other brands that can be turned into tokens and made into a global exchangeable system directly on the internet through this internet protocol? January 3rd, 2009, the world changed. Since then, more than 1,000 other cryptocurrencies have been created using the same recipe, almost all of them open source, and they're expanding in all directions, exploring every possible niche of this ecosystem, every tiny variation in capabilities and features, creating new markets which are raising funds for thousands of startups around the world. Thousands of engineers, software engineers, developers are training to use this new technology. The internet itself is changing very rapidly. Now we have autonomous agents that are using money on the internet, and these are, in many cases, beyond the controls of any jurisdiction. What are the large corporations going to do with this new magical, open, decentralized, neutral, borderless, censorship-resistant network? They're going to say, great, we'd like that, but could you take out the open, decentralized, borderless, neutral, censorship-resistant properties and package it with an SLA, a 12-month license, and control? Control for us. They will take the internet and they will make intranets. They will make closed gardens of boring, stale content that is fundamentally insecure, that sits in the backyards of corporations, adding a tiny bit of value, but outside of the participation of the global community, insulated from the wave of innovation that is happening all around us. They will create these intranets. They will claim victory. They will turn around and they will say, we invented blockchain. And they will be wrong, and they will fail. Because the real principle, the real exciting thing about this technology, it's not the blockchain, which is a database artifact that is created out of this protocol. It is the ability to achieve distributed consensus among parties that don't trust each other across great distances, without any central party, without any authority, without any intermediary. And that consensus from the outside looks chaotic. It looks messy. It looks weird. Well, everyone in this room already knows something that is open, flat, weird, and is not understood by corporations. The internet. We already did it once. We're going to do it again. And this time, we're going to bring the entire world with us. In the background of this grand story, there's another story that's playing out. After 25 years of the internet, it still takes 3 to 5 days to send money from here to a country that's not in Europe. It will still cost you $30, $40 to send money. And that's only if the country you're sending it to isn't a poor country, in which case it will cost far more and take far longer. A giant network of centralized, closed, corrupt systems that are sucking money out of the poorest people on this planet. In 2017, 2.5 billion people do not have access to banking. That means they have zero access to banking, cash-based only, and that's only counting heads of household, not their spouses, not their children. Clearly, they don't matter. That's according to the International Monetary Bank. Now, imagine what happens if you bring banking to an app, to a $20 Android, to everyone who has a smartphone. 3.5 to 4 billion people are on the internet today. Just over 1 billion people of those have banking, have full access to financial services. We're going to bring it to the other 6 billion fast. And this is going to change the world faster than the spread of cell phones. Imagine a $20 Android landing in a village in Kenya, and it's no longer just a communications device. It's a bank. Not a bank account, a bank. It can wire and receive funds from anywhere in the world. It can do lending or receive lending for a mortgage, to buy seeds for a field, to bring disaster relief. It can internationally connect every person on this planet, and we can do this within the next 10 years. The world will radically transform when you bring the capability of a broad economic inclusion to everyone in this world. Now, you would think that banks want to do this. You'd be wrong. It's not really profitable serving people who have little money, little connectivity, no access to ID in oppressed countries with terrible governments. Also, in most of those countries, the banks are criminals. They are criminal organizations, or really quite indistinguishable from the local mob. So how do we fix that? Up to now, the approach for all of these technologies, whether it was PayPal or any of the other technologies we've seen emerge in financial technology very, very slowly, was to carefully and politely ask for permission. Bitcoin is not asking for permission. We forgot to do that. And so we will proceed in banking the entire world without asking for anyone's permission. This protocol is now spreading. And if this one gets shut down, a 14-year-old with a copy of my book can rebuild it in a weekend in any programming language and launch it again with its new name, and again, and again, and again, until we succeed. The world is now connected. Finance is now an application, and money is a content type. Welcome to our new planet. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And it's changing rapidly, as you say. I was actually surprised when I last summer went to Spain, Malaga, and in a shopping center there was an ATM machine, and it said, "Get your Bitcoin here, or get your money here for Bitcoin." So
what do they actually give you?
I didn't try. I didn't have any, so I couldn't try.
So what the Bitcoin ATMs do is you hold up your smartphone device, which has a Bitcoin wallet, and it displays an address that can receive Bitcoin. You show that to the ATM, and you put in some dirty old paper money, and it spits Bitcoin to your smartphone. Done. Pretty straightforward. The best part of it is that the system is inherently secure because the ATM only knows how to send you money. Just like if someone has your email address, that doesn't mean they can read your email. That only means they can send you email. So similar principle to that.
And it works the other way around as well?
Usually in most countries it doesn't. And part of the reason for that is that governments are terrified of the idea of creating a two-way network where you can change from Bitcoin and back very easily. Yes. So as a result, most of these devices are characterized as vending machines that sell you magic internet money.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But it's often described as maybe the big problem with Bitcoin is that if you were early, cashed in early, and you have a lot of Bitcoin, you might be a millionaire today in Bitcoin money. But where can you spend it? How can you get dirty old paper money with your Bitcoin? Because there's a lot of banks that won't give you the old money for it, and like you said, they usually will only go one way. So am I just going to hoard all this Bitcoin until I feel like a millionaire? Yeah. But are we going to see a big change there soon?
Well, when I first got into Bitcoin, it was actually very difficult to buy anything. The first thing I bought was a pound of coffee beans, which I bought from a small store somewhere in the United States. Based on my latest calculation, I paid $12,000 for a pound of coffee.
Must have been some good coffee.
Nevertheless, those early moves.
Welcome, Wrangler. How you doing, man? You're muted there.
There we go. Sorry about that. I said, I'm all right. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Launching the first bullish bullpen here. Thanks for tuning in and copping on. Appreciate you.
Not a problem.
How you finding this initial presentation here?
Actually, it's kind of blowing my mind. I mean, I've heard a lot about the Bitcoin. This is the first time I've heard anything about like a completely autonomous company and a car that owns itself. And
yeah. The extrapolations of what it can do is kind of mind blowing.
I mean, following it to the logical conclusion, I mean, I'm still don't understand it completely here. Okay, I barely understand it still, but I mean, I could see how things might be going that way, especially with the programs we got out there now that can, like, pretty much with the right flow chart, be activated to do anything on its own.
Right.
But
right. I mean, just like you have bots that can buy and sell in the stock market, you can have bots that own Bitcoin and interact as well.
But that does get kind of freaky when a completely autonomous company owned by nobody starts making calculations and competing with businesses. We would be, I'll be honest, that doesn't sound like a good scenario. I mean, you see the other side too. Imagine the emergency services autonomous company that could really be a huge help. Like, no denying that. But
yeah. I mean, it's replacing a lot of things like, what do you call it? When people send money back to their country of origin, there's a term for that. My French speaking.
Was it the Western Union? It?
Yeah, exactly. So Western Union takes, I think, 20% off of the money you send. Like, the fees are absolutely out of this world.
Yeah, but at the same time, I wouldn't walk it over there for free either.
Say that again?
I said, but at the same time, I got to understand I wouldn't be willing to walk it all out all that way myself for free either.
No, of course, yeah, but that's the old technology. But the thing is, Bitcoin, by sending it through that channel, you can save all the fees. Like you basically reduce to zero fees. So the entire amount of money that you'd want to send to your family would land in their hands, and you wouldn't have to get a steep cut by 20% or such. There's also, like, in certain countries, it's very dangerous because the Western Union offices are like kind of surveilled by bad guys, by gangsters and thieves. So going to get your money to Western Union becomes like a risk. You could get hijacked along the way. So
Yeah,
by
that's one thing
doing
I can say is I don't think somebody could get mugged for their Bitcoin very easily.
no, because you wouldn't know if somebody's receiving it. Like you can send it to your family through their phone or computer in the other country, and just no one's the wiser. It's like sending a text message or an email.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it eventually being as ubiquitous and simple as someone using like a Cash App or something like that, except without the control of the Cash App company. That's
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's like Cash App with no middleman, in other words. So you can't get blacklisted, you can't get canceled, no one can interfere with the money sending. And it's
and that's
instant.
happened in a few banks. People have been like their accounts canceled out and they were kicked out of the bank just because of an opinion.
Yep, it happens all the time. People are being debanked as well. And as he was mentioning earlier in the presentation, there's a lot of people who just don't have access to banks, but they do have a phone. So those people are going to, like, especially in Africa, there's a huge culture around what's called the M-Pesa. And the M-Pesa is basically what it's basically like minutes on your phone. So in Africa, you can buy minutes that you're going to be used to talk on your phone, by the way. So you can also transfer that to somebody else. So people go to the store and they send minutes of their M-Pesa to the store when they buy goods, or they could pay their debts to friends using that system as well. Bitcoin is a much more valuable way to do that.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around you can embed it in things. I'm not a very techie guy, believe it or not.
Mhm.
You know, I know I've cranked out videos here and there, but I stumbled through that. All right.
Sure.
Yeah, but so I wouldn't understand all this stuff. I mean, I know if I want to do this, I would need to learn it. I need to get off my butt and actually do my due diligence.
Well, using it is a lot
But-
simpler. It's the same thing as dollars, right? You don't need to understand the financial system to go buy something at the store with $1. All you need to know is, like, okay, I'm going to give this paper to the clerk, and he's going to give me my beer, my bubble gum, whatever you're buying at the store, my eggs, my bread. Because that's one thing that you find out when you learn about Bitcoin is you learn a lot about the way the traditional financial system works. And that kind of gets people's blood boiling because you see a lot of waste and a lot of stealing that happens. Like, it's the whole of society kind of gets ripped off by this financial system that's in place.
Oh yeah, I'm not inviting the Federal Reserve dinner over for any Thanksgivings anytime soon. So
Exactly. All right, let's keep it. Let's continue the video, and just tell me to pause if you have any questions, and we'll pause it.
Help us build an economy. A lot of people think of Bitcoin as something you buy and then sell or invest in, and that's the wrong way to think about it. I don't buy Bitcoin. I haven't bought Bitcoin since 2013. I earn Bitcoin. I got paid Bitcoin to come here. I get paid Bitcoin to do all of my work. It's my primary source of income. All of my contractors get paid in Bitcoin. All of my employees get paid in Bitcoin. So, for example, this morning I sent my video editor a video that I recorded yesterday, pretty much similar to what we're doing here today. And they're in the Philippines. and I sent them a Bitcoin payment, which arrived in their bank account 25 minutes later. You cannot do that with traditional banking. Now, my contractor, they don't know that I'm using Bitcoin. In this particular case, they received Filipino pesos, but that's not a problem. And after a while, actually, they pick up on what's happening and they go, can you just send me Bitcoin directly? And the whole conversation changes. We're creating a closed economy where you can buy and sell things directly in Bitcoin, flights, hotels, things from Amazon. You know, that's easy. But eventually, you know, you have to think of Bitcoin a bit like foreign currency. If you're on the internet as a tourist, you use Bitcoin. If you're in Sweden, you use crowns. And so when you go on vacation to the internet or you want to buy something there, having a bit of Bitcoin, the local currency, serves you well. Of course, there's many others, and you may find lots of different options.
So, and there have been a lot of talk about Bitcoin mining.
Yes.
As a way to get rich.
Bitcoin mining is probably the worst way to try to get rich and will end poorly for most people. Bitcoin mining is an industrial infrastructure component. So let me ask a quick question from the audience, if you don't mind. How many people here know how BGP routing works?
There are some, actually.
And this is an internet conference. How many of you use the internet? Oh, never mind. You don't need to know how I know how BGP routing works, but usually I'm surrounded by no one else who does. And yet everybody uses it. So you don't need to know how Bitcoin mining works or why in order to use Bitcoin. Mining is the industrial infrastructure that secures the network and allows us to operate without intermediaries. And the miners are not intermediaries either. Anyone can join that network and participate at any time, leave. They're completely anonymous. We don't actually know where they are.
No, actually, yeah. Yeah, because I think at least media in Sweden are describing mining as something dark and, you know.
Yes.
Well, it certainly sounds dark. And I know miners, they're, you know.
Yeah, right.
Coal.
Sounds like a lot of hard work.
Mining is special purpose high performance computing that happens with application specific integrated circuits, silicon chips. Now, that's the kind of thing that if you print in a newspaper, nobody's going to buy that newspaper again. So that's why media don't describe it like that. Yeah. It's much better to think about the dark web. You know, that sells newspapers. Yeah. And so we're seeing this, but you know, I don't know how many of you were around in the early days of the internet. This is exactly what happened then. At the time, it was only for geeks and academics and obscure, weird technology that nobody would ever really use. And of course, a plaything for criminals, especially fraudsters. Yeah. And a lot of people were terrified to do online commerce, to buy things online. And they said, this will never work because people won't do it. So again, we're seeing a bit of that. People are afraid of change. And we're still very early days. We're about where the internet was in maybe 93, 94.
Yeah, so it was gaming, porn, and rock and roll.
Actually, 93, 94 was the first time we had DNS. It was mostly FTP, Archie, and Usenet, news groups in text. So no porn, couldn't really download that stuff.
Oh, you don't know ASCII artists.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for a very interesting
speech.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and that was it. That was Andreas Antonopoulos. I think that was back in 2018 or something like that. So a long time ago.
And I think they're pretty well financially set by now. How about you?
Well, actually, like a couple of years ago, he kind of announced that he didn't have that much Bitcoin. Like he was just living off of it and spending as much as he was earning it. And he didn't have like so he told people like he wasn't a Bitcoin millionaire. And this other guy called Roger Ver made fun of him on Twitter that you should have saved some Bitcoin. Like you're an idiot for not having done that. And what a silly person you are for not being a Bitcoin millionaire, having been in the space all that time.
Oh, it's easy to say, but isn't that kind of kicking a guy while he's down?
Exactly. And Andreas was such a helpful person that kind of helped everybody to learn about Bitcoin, like me included. So when people saw Roger Ver make fun of him on Twitter, everyone started sending him a little Bitcoin. And the guy became a Bitcoin millionaire within 48 hours.
Wow.
Just from donations of various people who knew him from back in the day. And they had like accumulated some Bitcoin wealth and generously donated some to him.
That's awesome.
Yep. You have kind of these fun stories here and there. I have another clip set up with Michael Saylor, but before we do, let's I have a little what is it, 2.5 minute clip, no, almost 3 minute clip with the founder of WikiLeaks. He has something to say about it. Let's listen to this clip here.
Right now, the most interesting thing happening is Bitcoin. It's probably the most interesting intellectual development on the internet in the last 5 years. A lot of people have heard about Bitcoin but not really understand it. So you think, okay, it's some online currency, what's the big deal? There's, you can have a PayPal account. That's kind of like an online currency, or even your Visa card. Well, actually, all the processing occurs online. Isn't that really like an online currency? Or you can buy gold. That's kind of like an online currency. But Bitcoin is different because it is a currency that cryptographically backed, multi-jurisdictional, which means that it's very hard for any one power group in any particular jurisdiction to start turning it into a rent-seeking apparatus. The underlying technology of Bitcoin is cryptography on the one hand, and the ability for cryptography to create situations that can defend itself or the people who use it against even the full might of a superpower. A full might of a superpower doesn't help you smash a mass problem. A mass problem is a mass problem, and it's something that is connected to the existence of intelligence in the universe or basic physics. It's not something you can get at simply through overwhelming coercive power or lots of people. And the other underlying basic technology is proof of publication at a particular time. And we've never really had that. In the digital world, we can delete history extremely easily, and history, even without an attempt to delete it, starts disappearing as a result of startup companies going under or particular bits of history not becoming profitable anymore. And that notion of being able to disappear history entered into Orwell's writing, and you can look at what is, I think, his most substantive intellectual comment, which is he who controls the present controls the past, he who controls the past controls the future. And it's this notion that the past, as an archive, as a history of our civilization, as a history of development, is in fact present right now in something physically contained in the library, in computer servers, in human beings' heads. That history doesn't exist except remnants that exist in the present. And so if you can get at these remnants, you can make particular inconvenient parts of history disappear and amplify others. Bitcoin, in its underlying technology, breaks Orwell's dictum. It breaks Orwell's dictum by providing proof of publishing at a certain time. And that is the intellectual underpinning of that whole system and can be used for lots and lots of other things. And so that's the big expansion we're about to see in Bitcoin. All derives from this basic premise that you can prove that a particular statement, a particular consensus, a particular contract happened at a particular time globally, and it requires the subversion of every single jurisdiction where people are running Bitcoin to overturn that.
That was Julian Assange. They were actually canceled, like they were debanked. The government tried to shut them down because they were revealing secrets that people didn't want to know about, that people didn't want out there. And once they were debanked, they were forced to go through Bitcoin. And he famously said he was glad that they forced him to go on Bitcoin because once the price went up, they had access to way more resources than they would have if they had stayed banked the traditional way.
Yeah. Well, if there's anybody who can find a way eventually, it's got to be Julian Assange. I mean, everything that dude's gone through.
Oh yeah, crazy. Now he's free, thank goodness. All right, this one's going to be a fun one. This one is with Tucker Carlson, and he's interviewing a man called Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor is a big businessman who had he'll probably cover all this, but he just got in recently in 2020. He famously tweeted like years ago that Bitcoin wasn't interesting and looked like a scam or just And it was when he revisited it and took a second look at it that he sort of discovered that it was the answer to a big problem he had. So get started on this one. And as always, Wrangler, if you have any questions, just let me know and I'll pause it and we can talk about it.
Alrighty.
Carlson, today, I feel like most people, you're perfectly aware there's something called Bitcoin, which is something called a cryptocurrency. You may have been skeptical of it, maybe even dismissive, but as the years have passed, it's become obvious to everyone that it's not going away, and it's probably going to be a central feature of our future. Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Can you benefit from it? And by the way, what is it exactly? You may have been afraid to ask that question. So we've searched long and hard for about 5 years, actually, to find someone who can answer all of those questions in a credible way.
Oh, we are joined here by Lord Otter. Welcome, Otter. How you doing, man?
Who let the water weasel in?
I think he found a way through the plumbing system.
I weaseled my way into the stream.
Yeah, well, you got to be careful because here we're in the land of the bull now.
Oh,
yeah. Do I have a clip for that? It's a long one. I made the mistake. I've uploaded like a dozen Bitcoin clips, but I did not name them. So
you were about to show me the clip, and now I feel blue-balled.
Well, I found it.
Amazing.
That's
I love it.
Toto.
Not so much blue-balled, but blue-bold.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the Bullish Bullpen, so we got a big bull for you here. All right, let's get going with Tucker and Michael Saylor. And as always,
big, beautiful bulls.
Let me know if you
so
have any
beautiful, so blue.
If you have any comments, we'll pause it.
That non-experts can understand. And we think we found one. He is Michael Saylor, who you probably recognize. He's an entrepreneur, of course, co-founder and CEO of MicroStrategy. He is a huge investor in Bitcoin specifically, and we think, maybe despite that or because of it or both, the man to ask. So he joins us now. Michael Saylor, we're really happy to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So I basically summed up my own position as clearly as I possibly could. I didn't know what to make of cryptocurrency. I don't understand it. I made fun of it. It's clearly not going away. It's clearly a really big deal. So let's just start at the beginning, if you don't mind, explaining what is it?
Okay, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the first engineered monetary system in the history of the human race. Full stop. So now to explain it, the first question is, what's money? The second question is, what's the problem? And the third question is, what's the solution?
Right.
Bitcoin is the solution. Now go back to the beginning. What is money? Well, an economy consists of goods, services, and property. You know, I want you to do something for me. I want that product. I want you to manufacture something for me. I want that house. I want that land. That's half the economy. Now, the question is, how do I send 37 horses to you? And then how do we keep the books balanced? So you have to send me back money. Money is socio-economic energy. Money is monetary energy, or it's the energy, the backhaul energy that we use to trade with. If I can send you 10 bushels of corn and you can send me money equal to 10 bushels of corn, then we can trade with each other. So in the history of the world, human beings have tried different monies. We've used seashells. We used the giant stone coin of the Yap people. We used tobacco bales in colonial America. We've used copper coins, silver coins. We've used stone coins. We use glass beads in Africa. These are all types of money. Eventually, we got to settle on gold and gold coins as money, but gold was never fast enough as money. How do you move 10 tons of gold from here to there? So ultimately, people used ledgers, and those ledgers were issued by a merchant, or they were issued by a mayor, or they're issued by an emperor. And you can go back 5,000 years and you can find Sumerian tablets in clay where they've etched in like 37, bushels of oats in return for something. These were the ledgers. So money is that shared ledger of who owes what to whom. And a lot of times the money is a token, like a glass bead. But the problem with a glass bead is if the Africans use a glass bead and the Europeans show up and they can manufacture 1 million glass beads, the Europeans dump 1 million glass beads on the Africans lose their homes and their livestock and all their wealth, and they're impoverished. So if you have weak money and someone else has strong money, if they can manufacture the money, like in the Pacific Islands, they use stone coins. Some European showed up in a ship and he realized that stone coins are rare on one island, but they're very plentiful, big stones on another island. He sailed to the other island, picked up the stones, brought them back to the first island, enslaved everybody on the island. So it's like, problem. So the problem with money is, how do we keep track and a fair distribution of who owns a claim to what? If there's $100 million worth of capital in the economy of products and property and corporations and the like, you have to have $100 million of money. Now, if I issue $100 million of currency, it equals all the stuff in the economy. Now, if I start to inflate the currency and I issue another $10 million,
yes,
now I've taken 10% of the economy and given it to my friend. That's the inflation rate. If I keep inflating the currency, if I double the amount of currency, but the amount of stuff in the economy is constant, well, then the price of everything that's scarce and desirable doubles.
Yes.
Okay. If it's not scarce and desirable, it won't go up. But if there's 100 things and there's 10 times as much money, it stands to reason that the things cost 10 times as much. So money is economic energy. The problem is inflation. Because in the history of the world, we have inflation. When the Romans created gold coins, they start with a certain amount of gold, and they would debase the currency, right?
Yes.
They would cut the amount of gold or cut the amount of silver in the coin, and when they cut it to a small enough level, no one would take the coin anymore. So the mercenaries don't want the coin. The emperor can't pay the mercenaries. The empire topples. If I just issue you paper, whatever the paper might be, and then I triple the supply of the paper, eventually the currency collapses. So the problem with currencies in the history of time is the trust in the issuer. You're trusting an individual, right? You're either trusting a banker, a JP Morgan, or you're trusting a family, the Rothschilds, or you're trusting a king or a prince, or you're trusting a mayor, or you're trusting a government. Now, if we look at the modern era, economists like Saifedean Ammous, who wrote the Bitcoin Standard, he estimates that the inflation rate in the modern era, dollar weighted, is 14%. Okay, think about that. For the last decade, on average, all in the world, we've been inflating the currency by 14% per year. Now, it happens that that's equal to the rate at which the S&P 500 index is going up, 14% on average a year for 10 years running. What's the issue? Well, what is inflation? It's not really well understood. Some people think it's CPI. CPI is the rate at which a market basket of consumer goods is going up, but the government gets to pick the basket.
I've noticed.
Okay, if I pick things like Domino's Pizza and streaming YouTube videos, they will never go up in price. I can actually adjust the basket, so I just pick things that don't go up in price. The Case-Shiller index is up 27% year over year, in July. So the price of that average single-family home is up 27%. Homes in Canada up 15%. The S&P index is up 34% this year over 12 months. What's the inflation rate? If you wanted to buy a basket of desirable stocks, the inflation rate is the S&P index. So I can calculate any inflation rate I want. Inflation is a vector. If I want to be rich, then I need to buy scarce, desirable assets. So my inflation rate is the rate at which Picasso's and Leonardo da Vinci paintings and stocks and property in New York City is going up in price, or a house in the Hamptons. That's a high inflation rate. If I want to be a consumer and live in my parents' basement and order Domino's Pizza and take Ubers and watch Netflix and stream YouTube, the inflation rate will be the CPI. It'll be very low. So you can have any inflation rate you want. As a practical matter, the best inflation rate for an investor or for anybody that wants to stay wealthy or be wealthy, if you're concerned about maintaining your economic purchasing power, it's the monetary inflation rate, the rate at which the supply of money is expanding. The supply of money expanded maybe 10% for a decade before COVID, and the S&P went up 10% a year. You know, we know the money supply expanded 30% post-COVID. The S&P is up 34%. The Fed stepped on the money printer. The same with the EU central bank. In the Western world, in the strongest countries, we see the money supply expanding 20, 25% or more per year. The currency is collapsing. It's losing its value. It's being devalued. In weaker countries, go to Argentina, the official inflation rate's 45%, the unofficial inflation rate's 85%. Go to Venezuela, the inflation rate, the currency's collapsed 98%, 99% in a year. Same in Lebanon, 90% currency collapse in a year. So what you have right now going on in the world is currency collapse, which we call inflation. And the mainstream view of inflation is it's only CPI, and sometimes it's PCE. It's an index of things, not including the highly volatile food and energy.
Right.
But in what universe can you live without food and energy?
Exactly.
But it's not really good. Like common sense says, if everybody tells me inflation rate's 2% or 5%, but the houses are costing 20% more, 15% more, and everything, if you talk to anybody that manufactures anything, they'll say that the prices are up 20%, 25% year over year. So how is it I'm supposed to actually buy something? How do you buy a share of stock that went up 34% a year when you got a CPI adjustment of 2% or 5%?
So it sounds like the people causing the inflation are lying about the inflation.
Classically, I just first of all, if you define inflation as the CPI, you're using simple arithmetic to describe the economy. You can't describe the economy and model it with simple arithmetic any more than you could describe fluid dynamics or aerodynamics with simple arithmetic, right? The fluid is flowing around the airfoil. You have to have n-dimensional, algebra and vector calculus to describe a complicated phenomena. The economy is a complicated phenomena. Another way to say it is the price of everything is varying everywhere at different rates all the time.
Right.
Common sense says the price of housing in the Hamptons is going up at a different rate than the price of land in Kansas. And the price will be going, and the price in a certain jurisdiction for a certain use, subject to certain regulations, will go up at a different rate than another jurisdiction for another use. So the problem is inflation. Inflation's a phenomena whereby a government authority prints more currency, right? And why do they print more currency? Because if I want to pay $1 trillion bill, I either have to tax you $1 trillion or I have to print $1 trillion of money. Turns out that it's a lot easier to print money than it is to tax people. And so it's either inflation or taxation. Throughout the history of the world, from Roman emperors before, every single coinage system, every monetary system ever established collapsed because of inflation. If you look at the history of the Sumerian states, the Persian states, the Greek states, the Roman states, Middle East, look at all the Renaissance Italian states, look at every king of England. If you just go forward, you find every one of these currencies started by I issue a coin with this much gold in it, and then I cut it, and I cut it, and then I go to silver, and then I go to copper, and then I coat it with some brass or some nickel. You remember what happened in the US where we used to actually have silver
quarters, yeah.
And now we don't because the silver was more valuable than the quarter.
Yes.
Why, right? We're debasing the currency, right? So the problem is inflation.
And inflation, just to be really clear about what you just said, which is fascinating, is caused by expanding the money supply.
Yes. Simply put, you live in a town, there's 100 nice houses, there's $1 million in the money supply, the mayor prints another $1 million, distributes it to the citizens, what's the price of the house do?
Right. And you're saying that inflation is always the cause of the collapse of the currency, and the collapse of the currency sounds to me like it's the cause of the collapse of the civilization.
Yep. Because if you look at all these wars, right? How long does a war go on? In World War I, every single nation went off the gold standard within a week of the declaration of World War I. The Germans, the French, the Brits, the Americans, we printed money. The money got debased. There was rampant inflation. Eventually, after 4 years, you can print money for about 4 years before you collapse the currency, and then you don't have any means to fight the war. The Germans sued for peace because they ran out of money after 4 years. Okay. World War II, we ran out of money in 4 years. Vietnam, you know, we paid for it with inflation. Eventually Nixon had to go off the gold standard because they printed so much money, they couldn't redeem the gold. They defaulted on it. We went to the fiat standard, and we just began to print more money. You'll find that throughout history. And of course, put yourself into the position of the Roman emperor or the city mayor or the noble. You have a monopoly on the coinage. You need to pay the army. You can either go to everybody that lives in your nation and take half their stuff, or you can just print twice as many coins.
But what I thought the whole idea behind modern monetary theory was, as long as you have the world's reserve currency, inflation isn't a threat to you.
Well, if you print, how would you say this? If there's a certain amount of goods and services and capital in the economy, and you just keep printing money, you're not creating any more capital in the economy. You're not creating any more products. You're not creating any more buildings. You're not creating any more services. All you're doing is doubling and tripling the amount of currency. So if I just gave everybody in the United States $1 billion and everybody went out to buy a Ferrari, right? Would there be 250 million Ferraris? Like, I can print the money, right? Like, look at Venezuela, look at Zimbabwe. They can print the money. You can give someone $1 trillion note, but that doesn't create more stuff, right? You're just creating paper. So ultimately, that inflation, it works only to an extent if you can export it. And what you're doing is you're not creating anything. What you're doing is you're redistributing wealth. Like, if there's $10 billion in the economy and there's this much stuff, and I give $1 billion to you, you now get 10% of the stuff from somebody else, which means that everybody else lost 10% of their stuff, right? As I inflate the economy, inflate the currency, I'm actually redistributing wealth from those that store their life savings in currency or currency derivatives, in cash. If you had $1 million in the bank 12 months ago, today it buys you 34% less, right? The S&P is up 34%. You have $1 million. If you put it in the stock market, you've got $1.34 million. If you hold it in cash, you've got $1 million. If you go to buy a stock now, it costs you 34% more to buy the stock. If you go to buy a house in the Hamptons, it's 40% more to buy the house in the Hamptons. You know, if other things are going up in price, your cash is fixed. So it turns out that you've got some people that don't have net cash positions. If you're a sophisticated investor and you're wealthy, all of your assets are in property. You have buildings, you have companies, you have real estate, you have collectibles, you have sports franchises.
Right, you have things.
If you're middle class, working class, you're working for cash, and whatever cash you've got, right, is either sitting in the bank or you don't have a lot of net cash. So the real significance here is, if the dollar loses 20% of its purchasing power each year, then the value of your salary is deteriorating by 20% a year. It's not falling at the rate of CPI inflation. It's falling at the rate of monetary inflation. The road to serfdom is working exponentially harder for currency growing exponentially weaker. Okay? That's the problem. You're a dentist, you're generating 5% more a year for a decade. I'm inflating the money supply at 20% a year for a decade. If you save every penny in 10 years, you'll be able to buy 1/4 of what you could have bought today, because the price of housing is going up at 20% a year, and you're just not ever going to catch up, right? Because you're getting paid in currency. The only way you can actually stay ahead is to grow your cash flows faster than the rate of monetary inflation. And that's why the rate of expansion of the money supply is so critical. And that there's not even a word for that other than cost of capital. The best surrogate for monetary inflation, in my opinion, is the S&P index, a distributed market basket of scarce desirable products. So money is energy. The problem is inflation. If we're inflating at 10% a year, you know, you've got 10 pints of blood in your body. When you go to give blood, I take a pint out. When I take a pint of blood out of your body, you lose the red blood platelets. Anybody common sense knows you run the Boston Marathon the next day, you got a problem. You can't perform as an athlete. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to replace the red blood cells. So when I take a pint of blood, you're not going to be able to perform for a month to two, probably 2 months later. Now, imagine if I actually took a pint of your blood every month, forever. That's inflation. So I'm running an economy, I'm the king. You know, you have a dojo and I send someone from the government and we just take a pint of blood from every one of your fighters. And then next month we do it again. And next month we do it again. And next month we do it again. Now, what do you expect your athletic performance to be?
In decline.
Yeah, that's the problem of a currency which is collapsing. But let me tell you, that's 10%. Venezuela is not 10%. Zimbabwe is not 10%. The Argentine peso was 1 peso to the dollar 20 years ago, and it's pushing toward 200 pesos to the dollar today. They've lost 95, 98, 99%. In a hyperinflating economy or a rapidly inflating economy, you're not losing 10% of your economic value a year. You're losing 20 to 25 to 30 to 40. So that's like I send some dude to the dojo to bleed you every week. And then at some point, I'm sending someone to bleed you every day, and that's the Weimar Republic, right? Hyperinflation. When, another metaphor, the currency is to the economy what your blood is to your body, and economic energy or money is to the currency what oxygen is to your blood. So
what a
common
great
sense
analogy.
says if I keep sucking the oxygen out of the room, if I suck.
Right. Everyone can feel that one. Like, say, you're sucking the blood out of your body. How do you feel about that?
A little on the
I'm not too
visceral
happy
side.
about it, for one.
Say again, Otter?
I'm not too happy about it, for one.
Right. Inflation's so abstract for a lot of people that they don't really care about it so much. You know, it's like, yeah, it doesn't. It's things banks and politicians have to worry about, and that's how we get everyone kind of scammed at the same time. Everyone's hoodwinked because it's just one big operation that's so high up.
Yeah, I
think to a
consider
certain
the inflation
extent-
just to be the devalue of our labor.
I think to a certain extent, like, inflation is hard to actually, like, picture. Like, you can see, like, the prices of groceries and everything going up, but it's not like that's all you're really seeing. And even then, that's like whenever there's like a lot of inflation at once. And
Because
that's
it's
not
more of an
regarding, like,
ongoing calculation rather than a physical thing.
right. It's calculus. That's what it is. You're seeing something in motion, not so much what it is in the moment.
Yeah, and people still play the finger pointing game with that because you could say, well, it's the grocery stores that are being greedy. Like, why are they selling the eggs so expensive? They're just greedy people. They're taking advantage of the poor working man. These grocery stores there.
Yeah, but how much do they pay to put them on their shelves?
Right, the chicken. It's not harder for the chicken to make an egg. It's because your money's worth less. But that's hard to understand. And because nobody really has grasped it yet, it's hard to kind of believe it, even though it's true.
Also, at that time, there was a loss of a lot of chickens, so it made the eggs so much more apparent. We saw that so much more keenly because it happened the same time as all grocery prices were shooting up.
Yeah. Yep.
What I think is so neat about Bitcoin, though, is that Bitcoin is kind of the reverse of most currencies, whereas, like, whereas 99.999% of currencies like inflate over time, you're just printing more and more money. Bitcoin, there can only be so much of it. If anything, you lose Bitcoin over time because some of it like gets lost.
Correct.
And what it ends up doing is on top of that, like you're seeing kind of like all the value in the world. Money is just an abstraction. Like there is a finite amount of value. Bitcoin slowly soaks that up over time. So it's actually an inflationary currency. So it gains value over time. So it's like the inverse of what you're used to with money.
Yeah, deflationary currency is what they call it.
Deflationary. Did I say inflationary?
Yep.
Oh, my bad.
And yeah, exactly. So because you get new Bitcoin that's printed every 10 minutes, but it's fixed. Like you say, it's a fixed number. And we know what that number is. And we know what it's going to be until the year 2140 when the last Bitcoin is going to be mined. So you can, there's no surprise. There's no human that comes in and is going to intervene and is going to say, well, you know, if we just realized we needed more Bitcoin, so we're just going to print it. That can't happen because we have computer systems in place that protect from that happening.
I think this is one of the best bits of rhetoric you could make for Bitcoin. Money without borders.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's what Andreas was saying earlier. It's the internet of money.
Yeah, I think you used that exact same phrase, Otter. It was in the clip right before you came on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Shall we get back to Michael?
Sure.
Here we go.
The oxygen out of the room, you're going to either suffocate or freeze to death. And if I keep sucking the economic energy out of the currency, the economy collapses. In the extreme, you get ripped back to Stone Age barter, right? When the money doesn't work anymore, I have to trade you cigarettes for bullets.
Right.
And the problem with that is the economy becomes 1,000,000 times less efficient, right? If you don't have money, it's like, now, how many countries in the world have a collapsed currency? 66 are dollarized. There's 180 about countries. There's 130 floating currencies. All of them are weaker than the dollar. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. The US dollar is expanding. It was expanding 10% a year for a decade, now expanding at 14% a year. It expanded 34% over the past 12 months. The dollar is weakening. Okay, it's like the oxygen is getting sucked out of the room. So Tucker, if I told you the oxygen is getting sucked out of the room and there's an oxygen mask drops out of the ceiling over there, what would you do?
Run for it.
Yeah, put the oxygen mask on. Bitcoin is the oxygen mask. Bitcoin, the idea of Bitcoin. Let's move to the third
Let me
spot.
pause and say, you've made the most compelling case I've ever heard for the need for something like Bitcoin. So you're saying, just to make sure that everyone's following this, the whole point of Bitcoin is to escape the inflation vortex that has consumed all these previous empires.
The point of Bitcoin is to fix the money. And money is energy, and energy is life. And if I keep sucking the energy out of the economy, I'm sucking the oxygen out of your system. Either under the best case, you perform poorly. Under the worst case, I suffocate you to death or freeze you to death. That's the problem. That's why empires collapse. That's why economies collapse. And the problem, it's not just a problem for an individual. It's not just a problem for a family. It's a problem for every institution. It's a problem for every company. It's a problem for every city, every municipality, every government, every civilization. They all have this problem. And you can generally trace the problem to, I fought a war I couldn't afford to fight. And I paid for it with money I didn't have, right? If you declare war on COVID, you've got a war. You declare war in Vietnam, you declare war on fill in the blank. History is full of wars. If I had to fight them with taxes, then eventually my population would say no more. We don't want to pay the tax. If I fight them by inflating the coinage, then I get a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years before people realize it. Eventually, I just collapse the currency. So money is essential to civilization. The problem is inflation. And why does it happen? It's a natural human condition because as you have an authority that controls the money, the temptation to inflate the money supply is omnipresent and inescapable, and every civilization has suffered from it at one point in time. What is Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is the world's first engineered monetary system. And what happened is a set of engineers, nameless engineers, recoiled in horror after the great financial crisis with all the bank bailouts. And they looked and they said, this just isn't fair. It isn't right. We want to create a better money. And they used two technologies. They used the internet, the idea that I could network hundreds of thousands or millions of computers. And they used cryptography, the idea that I could cryptographically sign something so that it could not be tampered with anyone, friend or foe. And using those two technologies, they conceptualized the idea of an immutable ledger, if you will, a bank in cyberspace. What if 100 people got together, 100 people with money got together, and they said, we're going to create a bank in cyberspace. And we want to put our money there, and we don't trust each other. We don't trust the government. We don't trust any corporation. We don't even trust any one computer. So we create a program that keeps track of a ledger, 21 million coins or shares in the bank, divisible by 100 million, called this down to a Satoshi. So 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis. You don't have to know that. All you need to know is there's 21 million coin units. You can't make any more. And they wanted to create it so that they could send their money to each other, to anybody in the network. They could store it for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years, forever. And they don't have to trust anybody. So they created this idea of Bitcoin. It's an asset that's protected by cryptography, and it's stored on a ledger. The software administers the ledger. The twist is we distributed the software on thousands and thousands of separate computers. Every Bitcoin node is running a copy of the ledger. So everybody in the world that has their money in the bank has a copy of all of the money in the bank and all the transactions since the beginning of time. So it's the immutable truth. Every 10 minutes, the system batches a set of transactions and then redistributes the money based upon the instructions of the owners. If I want to send you my Bitcoin, I send it and it goes to you. And every single computer on the network updates that. And they all check it cryptographically using modern encryption. Now, how do we defend the network? There's really three nodes of interest to make this compelling. The first node is that Bitcoin node that keeps track of that ledger. It's the most secure database in the world, and it's a database of immutable truth. It's the ledger of money. The second node is a miner. It's SHA-256, or it's an encrypting miner that's generating hash functions to protect the network, and there are millions of them. And they're all competing with each other to build the next block. There's only 1 out of 2 million involved in this network. It's like every miner gives you a lottery ticket, and 1 of the 2 million will get to build the next block and will get paid a lot of money, like 300,000.
So technically, every miner gives you a lottery ticket every 10 minutes. So it's like having 144 lottery tickets every day. So just wanted to throw that in there.
I heard people who are mining Bitcoin have very big power bills.
Oh, yeah. Those machines cost electricity, and you're going to have to pay for that electricity.
Well, it's
which
insane amounts of power.
Yeah. So it's way better to buy the Bitcoin straight up, because miners are kind of like playing. You have to get like really low electricity prices, and people who have low electricity bills are people who have like special deals with the electricity company. So you have like industry level players. So you have a lot of mining in Texas. Like Texas is really good for mining. Here in Quebec, it would be really great. The politicians were averse to it. They don't understand it still because we got hydroelectricity, we got cold weather. This would be the actual perfect place for that. But the politicians are not up to snuff with what's happening. But Texas is very pro Bitcoin right now, and a lot of miners are down there. All right, let's get back to Michael.
$1,000, and you don't know which one. So the miners are a wall of encrypted energy. They're converting electricity into hashes, and then inside that wall of electricity or wall of energy is the Bitcoin ledger, which is distributed in a decentralized fashion. And there's one other interesting node called a Lightning node. This is a layer 2 decentralized system. This is decentralized payments. It'll move small amounts of Bitcoin at the speed of light programmatically, almost for free. Okay, so Bitcoin is a decentralized piece of software. The brilliance of it is it's a bank in cyberspace that nobody controls, nobody can corrupt. It's a bank run by incorruptible software offering a global, affordable, simple, secure savings account for everybody on Earth that has neither the means nor the inclination to run their own hedge fund. Right? You have some money, you have life savings, you simply don't want to lose it. You want to put it in a bank. So Bitcoin is that bank in cyberspace. These engineers came up with this idea.
Who are the engineers?
Well, we don't know. We know some of them. They're the cypherpunks. They were into cryptography. The most important of them was Satoshi, who we don't know who it was. Satoshi wrote the white paper, created the first version of Bitcoin, gave it to the rest. And initially, there wasn't any money in the network. They just ran it for a year as a hobby, right? And then over time, there was a famous transaction where somebody bought a pizza, right, for like 10,000 Bitcoin, one pizza. And that was the first transaction. And then the network gradually began to monetize as people bought into the network. And so it's like a fire in cyberspace.
Should we be nervous that we don't know the identity of the founder?
No, I don't think we should be nervous. We should be joyful, because for Bitcoin to work, it needs to be money of the people. It needs to be not controlled by any individual. It needs to be not under the thumb of a founder or a corporation or one strong holder. The most important thing Satoshi did was he created this gift. He gave it to the world. I assume a he. Some people think she. Some people think it's multiple people. But Satoshi gave this gift to the world and disappeared. And Satoshi mined about 1 million coins getting it started, but those coins never moved. Never. They've never been moved. Satoshi's never appeared again. And then the network was in essence a community development all around the world for the next decade. And it's simply grown from $1 million in the bank to 10 million to 100 million to 1 billion to 10 billion to 100 billion. In March of our second quarter of 2020, it was about $180 billion in this network. And that's where I got involved. I was late. But when I got involved, what I saw was an engineered monetary asset, a digital gold, if you will, sitting on an open big tech monetary network. And I said, this is an economic imperative because this solves the problem of inflation for a corporation with lots of cash. I had a lot of cash, and I thought I was going to lose all of it if I didn't invest it in something. And I said, it is also a moral imperative. This is a technology to give property rights to 8 billion people on the planet that don't have property rights, right? Bitcoin is the highest form of property the human race has ever invented. And I'll explain why in a second. There's 2 billion people that don't have a bank. Right, you can give everybody on the planet a bank and property rights that cannot be corrupted and cannot be inflated and confiscated. You can give it to them for the price of a free download on Android. If you got a $50 phone and you can download some software, you can have your own bank, your own property rights, your own economic freedom and economic empowerment. So it's a moral imperative. And then finally, it's a technical imperative. You're talking about the digital transformation of everything else. The digital transformation of property, of gold, of banks, the digital transformation of war, the digital transformation of government, of security. It's a deep idea, but in essence, if the economy's got $500 trillion worth of property and corporations and stuff in it, well, digital property as capital, as money, is worth that amount. It's worth half of everything, right? And so we never figured out how to digitally transform money or digitally transform capital. We did digitally transform photos and videos and education and books and relationships and communications.
Right.
And you know, the secret to success of Google and Amazon and Apple and Facebook is the digital transformation of entertainment and education and communications. But think about what it means to digitally transform $10 trillion of gold or $100 trillion of property or $100 trillion of currency. So these engineers, they wanted to solve that problem. And of course, there's so many big ideas. One is, it was engineered to be a digital gold with none of gold's defects. 21 million coins, but you can't make any more. The problem with gold is gold miners inflate the gold supply, and gold bankers inflate the gold paper supply. They dump gold derivatives on the market. With every other asset on earth, anything else you can own, houses, gold, silver, commodities, stocks, bonds, when the price goes up, the supply increases. If I increase the price of any stock by a factor of 10, the company issues more stock.
Of course.
If I buy all the bonds, all the municipal bonds, the price of bonds go up, people issue more bonds, right? If I drive up the price of gold by a factor of 10, people print more gold or mine more gold. Bitcoin's the only thing in the world that's inelastic to price. If the price of Bitcoin triples, you can't make any more. If the price goes up by a factor of a million, you can't make any more. Now, so Tucker, let me just give you one more engineering insight. In engineering, there's something called conservation of energy.
Yes.
And the whole point of conservation of energy is energy can either be made or destroyed. There has to be conservation of it. The mathematical metaphor, the mathematical analogy to that is proper math. 10 plus 10 equals 20. 2 plus 2 equals 4. If 10 plus 10 ever starts equaling 18, you got a problem.
Yeah.
If you have a bathtub and there's a leak, if you have a swimming pool with a leak, if I have electric system with a short circuit, if I have a leak in my engineering system, nothing works. Nothing in the world of ocean engineering, aeronautical engineering, electrical engineering, nothing works lest you respect conservation of energy. The problem with inflation is inflation does not respect conservation of energy. I've got a leak in the system. I've designed a currency which is not conservative. So properly understood, if you said, I want a conservative money supply, a conservative money supply would be there's $10 billion in the economy and nobody prints anymore.
Right.
And that's the Austrian economic sound money principle. Bitcoin is a conservative monetary system. It's the first system that respects the laws of thermodynamics and the laws of physics and the laws of math, which means it is true and pure, right? It has integrity. If you have integrity, if you have something which is true and pure and you have durability, then you can build a family around it, a life around it, a company around it, or civilization around it. Steel is concentrated energy in metallic form. You ever walk in a steel plant and you look at the energy going into steel refining? Yeah. It's concentrated energy. The history of the human race is the civilization that channels energy most effectively always wins. Steel trumps iron. Iron trumps bronze. Bronze trumps rocks. Bows and arrows trump the guy with the spear. The guy with the spear beats the guy with the knife. It's always a matter. If you have air power, you beat land power. Sea power beats the army, and nuclear power trumps everybody. And so If I have steel, I have concentrated metallic energy, I can create a skyscraper punched up 100 stories in New York. How long will it last? 100 years. How long will a steel ship last? Longer than you will last, as long as it doesn't corrode. Wooden ships? Not so much. Wooden ships rot, right? You want to build a building and punch it up against gravity and hold it 100 years, you need concentrated energy. If you want to build a trust fund that'll last 100 years, how do you save $100,000 for 100 years and give it to your great grandkids? You put it in the US dollar, use 99% of your economic energy. If you're maybe 99.5%. You put it in gold, gold supply doubles every 30 years. The gold bankers keep inflating the gold. Maybe you lose 90% of your economic energy. But that would be a lucky happenstance because just about every country on earth seized the gold from their citizens in the last 100 years. Everybody, even the US, they take your gold.
Yeah.
So you want to save money for 100 years. You can't do it with the currency. You can't do it with gold. Which company is going to be around 100 years? You want to put $100,000 into real estate in Florida? Can you buy $100,000? Let's say you could. 2% tax, 2% maintenance, 4% maintenance fee, 4% of $100,000, $4,000 a year. Half-life, like your money's not going to last 100 years. How do I preserve my property, which is economic energy, which is capital, which is money? How do I preserve that? I need something harder, right? More durable. I need a steel. I need an economic steel. Steel is concentrated metallic energy. Bitcoin is concentrated digital energy. It's energy in digital form. It's vacuum-packed food. It's something sitting in orbit, right? Right? I eliminated the friction on energy. What's the half-life of energy? If I take a megawatt of power and I sell it at 12 cents a kilowatt hour, I have about $1 million. Okay, I give you $1 million of electricity. How long can you hold it in a battery? You lose 2% a month. You can't hold it very long. You're going to lose 24% depletion rate in a battery of electricity. How do you send $1 million of electricity from New York to Tokyo? You can't. You can send electricity 500 miles over a power line, you'll lose 6%. Send it 10 times, you'll lose 60%. It doesn't move. Convert that energy, that electricity, into digital energy, a la Bitcoin. You upgrade it. If you were to convert a megawatt of power via a Bitcoin miner into Bitcoin, you'd have about $5 million worth of Bitcoin. You can hold it forever. You can send it to Tokyo for a nickel. Okay, you can put it in a trust fund, right? Bitcoin's going up 170% a year for a decade. The S&P 500 index is going up 14% a year on average for a decade. Gold is flat. It's not going anywhere. It's getting demonetized. It's a dead rock in a basement. It's not fast enough. You can't put gold on an iPhone. Gold's getting depleted, inflated, and manipulated away by the bankers and the miners. So Bitcoin is simply pure economic energy. These engineers, Satoshi and all of Satoshi's compatriots, what they did is created an engineered monetary asset on an open, permissionless network that anybody could participate in. Any country, any company, any individual. You don't need a bank. You don't need to ask permission, right? It is the ultimate egalitarian system. If you want to give property rights to everybody in Africa and South America, even in the face of a hostile regime, you can do it with a $50 Android phone and a simple download. What's your next best idea? Go to Zimbabwe. Okay, you have $100. How are you going to store the $100? One more metaphor. If you can't store property, if you have no property rights, that means you can't store economic energy. If I took away every dime from your family and you got up tomorrow, you'd be worried. You lose your job, you're going to go hungry, right? You need money. You've got a bank. You're in the Western world. You have Western privilege. Lucky you. You have stocks. If you have stocks, they go up 34% a year. Maybe you're keeping ahead of the inflation rate. If I take away your stocks and you have to store in currency, well, now you can't stay ahead. If I take away your bank, you can't even have the currency. What if the dollar is not the worst currency? The dollar is the best currency. If I put you in Zimbabwe, it's much worse. If you're in Argentina, you lost 40 to 60% of your purchasing power this year. If you're in Venezuela, much worse. So what does it mean to not have property rights and to not have a strong currency? It's like being a type 1 diabetic. If you're type 1 diabetic, you can't form insulin. Insulin converts excess nutritional energy into fat. Fat is an organic battery. Fat will keep you alive 90 days without food. If you can't form fat, you can eat continuously nonstop and you will starve to death. So diabetes, before insulin was invented, was a death sentence. If you live in a country with a collapsed currency, you're an economic diabetic. In the 2 weeks after you lose your job, you can't feed your family, you can't feed yourself, you can't plan for the future. So now we're back to what's the basis of civilization and what's the basis of virtue in a society? So you got to be able to plan for the future. You got to look out 10 years and believe that you can provide for your family. What's the point of investing in something if you think that everything's going to hell in 5 years or 10 years? How did I get into Bitcoin? I had a company with $500 million in cash, earning 0% interest. And I heard the banker say, we're not even thinking about raising interest rates. I saw a K-shaped recovery where everybody on Wall Street got 30% richer doing nothing in a year, where everybody on Main Street had to work 30% harder to stay still. That's what I saw last year. If you're on Wall Street with $1 billion, you went into the year with $1.3 billion. If you're on Main Street working for a living, selling something by the sweat of your brow, you had to raise your prices 30%, working harder in order to generate 30% more money to buy the same thing you could have bought before the crisis. What I saw was 2,000 people in my company working hard, doing 100,000 things right every year could make $50 million. And the money in the bank was going to lose $100 million a year in value doing nothing. And we were running as hard as we could and going backwards. Right? That's the problem. It's like you're in a boat, you're rowing across, you're in a rowboat, you're going across the water, and the wind starts blowing in your face, and now you're getting blown backwards. You're going to row harder? The wind is the monetary inflation rate. Right? When at 10% wind is hard. When it got to 20% wind, who can grow their cash flows 25% a year? Who can do it? A monopoly, a digital tech monopoly might, but I mean, nobody else can. Dentist can't, doctor can't, normal people can't, normal company can't. So the wind starts blowing double and triple in your face. You're rowing, you're not going to get across the Atlantic. You're going to die on that rowboat. So what do? Turn the boat around, put up a sail with the wind.
Yeah.
That's what I did. So let me give you an economic short story here. The company's worth $1 billion. This is MicroStrategy. We've got a $500 million software company that generates $50, $75 million a year in cash flow. We have $500 million in the bank. We're valued at 1 times revenue plus the cash. And the cash is going to lose 20, 30% of its value. So I'm looking at losing $100 million a year, $150 million.
By doing nothing, just sitting there.
Just sitting there doing nothing. Yeah. Well, so what do? I said, well, I'm going to buy something. So I went and I bought Bitcoin. I bought $250 million worth of it. And then I offered to buy back $250 million of my stock because if my shareholders didn't like the idea, I figured I'll buy them out at a premium. After the buyback, I had another $175 million left. I bought more Bitcoin. We had $425 million of Bitcoin. When I started this journey, Tucker, the stock was $120 a share. We bought out our limited partners. We bought out our shareholders at $140 a share that didn't like the idea. The stock traded up. Bitcoin traded up. We doubled our initial investment. The stock kept going up. And then I looked and I said, I'm just going to borrow money. I went and I borrowed $650 million at 75 basis points in the capital market. I issued a convertible bond. I bought the Bitcoin, 19,000. The stock kept trading up. Bitcoin kept trading up. We'd made billions at that point. I went back to the market. I borrowed $1 billion at 0% interest. Because why wouldn't you? And if the money supply is expanding at 25% a year and you can borrow money at 0% interest, all you got to do is buy something which is scarce, right? So I bought $1 billion of Bitcoin. I issued $1 billion of bond. To make a long story short, we ended up borrowing $2.2 billion at 1.5% interest. We bought the Bitcoin. Bitcoin has hit an all-time high. We now have about $7.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. We've made about a $4 billion investment profit on it. The stock went from 120 to 850. We generated about $8 billion in shareholder value in 12 months.
Have you talked to your limited partners who got out early?
It's complicated when you're a publicly traded company.
I can't even imagine.
But, you know, so now what are we? We're like, we're a $500 million software company generating maybe $80 to $100 million a year in cash flow, growing 0 to 10% a year.
Right.
With a $7.5 to $8 billion endowment that's growing 170% a year. But, you know, it's like, why not? Like, so now, you know, if you're a university, you want an endowment, and now we can do what we want.
Well, so let me get to, first of all, that was, how long have we gone? How long is this? You spoke uninterrupted for about 50 minutes.
You can cut me.
That was, no, that was amazing. That was like one of the most unbelievable things I've ever heard. I have two questions, okay? All of this is predicated, the remarkable case you just made on behalf of Bitcoin is predicated on the idea that Bitcoin is safe. It fundamentally is as a software matter that it can't be hacked. You said that the database that undergirds it is the most secure in the world. Why are we so positive that when the CIA can be hacked, this can't be?
Yeah, when we started down this journey, we were looking for digital gold. We're looking for engineered perfect gold that you can move at the speed of light and program on a computer.
Yes.
And the theoretical answer to that is a crypto asset that's got a fixed supply that's secure.
Yes.
So we went on this search, and there are 10,000 cryptos, Tucker.
Yes.
Right? We had to look. Is it Bitcoin? Is it Bitcoin Cash? Is it one of the clones? Is it Dogecoin? Is it, you know, fill in the blank? We applied the MicroStrategy test. It's a 3-part test. Will it be banned? Will it be hacked? Can it be copied?
Yeah.
Right? If you can duplicate it 18,000 times, then it's not scarce and it's not unique. It's not the dominant one. Okay. And if it gets banned, that's no good for us. And if it gets hacked, that's no good for us. So first of all, how can you know the answer to this from the engineering itself? Well, you can't. If the year is 2009 or 2010, you don't really know whether it'll be banned, copied, or hacked, right? There's a lot of uncertainty. We started on our quest in 2020. So in 2020, we had 12 years of history. So what did we see? Well, by 2020, the system had been attacked thousands and thousands of times, but no one had hacked it. So we had $180 billion sitting in a network that no one could figure out how to hack. No one ever hacked it. People, by the way, people will hack the banks around it or the wallets around it, but not the underlying network. So we had 12 years of no hacking incident. No, and very good reason to believe it won't be hacked, because it is the most secure database in the world. And why is it the most secure? Because the way it works is you have to run a SHA-256 ASIC miner. It's a very special purpose computer. That computer only does one thing. It protects Bitcoin. That's all it can do. It can't stream video. It can't process for AWS. That network is that computer is millions of times more efficient at generating crypto hashes that defend the Bitcoin network. It's a special purpose thing, 7 generations. If you turned all of the AWS network or the Azure network against it, it wouldn't make a dent, because this is a very special purpose piece of hardware. So the technology that's used to secure the network is called proof of work. And proof of work is I pour a lot of energy into the network and I run it through an encryption algorithm, and that's a SHA-256 hash generator. And the combination of those two things with the protocol means that the dominant crypto asset proof of work network will always be the most secure one, and everyone will always defect from the weaker one to the stronger one. So we saw that it hadn't been hacked. There's no way to finesse it, no matter what you do, because it really is it's a brute force wall of encrypted energy. If you want to attack the network and even try to meddle with one block, you'd have to throw $10 billion of capital equipment at it, and it'll probably take you 2 to 4 years to get ready to do that
Okay,
experiment.
so that leads exactly to my next question. So that's really, that only a government would do that. And that leads to my next question, which is, right, so like, what's a government? A government is an organization that controls a discrete territory, has borders, and mints the coins, issues the currency. So this seems to me like an existential threat, no overstatement, to the idea of a nation state, an independent international currency. Why would governments allow this?
Yeah, so that gets to the question of, will it be banned? By the way, it can't be hacked for what I said. It can't be copied because you got to come up with the same $10 billion worth of energy and special purpose hardware. And if you had that much energy and hardware, you'd be getting paid $10 billion a year to use it to protect Bitcoin, or you get paid zero to try to copy it. So it doesn't make any sense to try to copy it. It's like the dominant monetary network, like Google and Facebook are also dominant networks. Once you get to that dominant position, it's obscenely difficult. Coming back to the banning, there's a kind of misnomer. People often call cryptocurrencies currencies, but it's not a currency, it's an asset. It's a crypto asset. So you're right, Tucker. If the government thought it was a currency, and if it competed with the U.S.
Free.
I was going to say, I thought I lost signal there for a second.
No, I think the video just stopped.
Oh, I was muted. I was commenting over it.
Oh.
I'm an idiot. Sorry
It
about
happens.
that,
It
guys.
happens.
You're in good company.
I boomered. No, I just wanted to comment on the fact that he says it's not a currency, because that's an opinion that he has that differs from other Bitcoiners. So it is a currency. You can spend it. People spend it all the time buying. Like, I could go to a coffee shop here and pay in Bitcoin. In Vancouver, there's a portion of the city that's very well adopted. Either he says this so he won't be targeted by the government as competing with the dollar or something, or he really believes it. But I just wanted to mention that not everybody has to
I can see how he might say it's so much more, but
yeah,
it's still a medium of exchange.
It is, and he doesn't see the value in that. He just loves spending dollars for what he needs, with credit cards or just dollars straight up. And because he's from the point of view of he represents corporations, right? He represents their interest as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So sorry for the muted comment there. All right, let's get back to.
All righty.
US dollar or other currencies, then they would take offense and they will suppress it. But on the other hand, if it's viewed as an asset which competes with gold or with index funds or with bonds or property or real estate, just a store of value or silver, then you can hold S&P index funds and bonds, and you can own land and you can own property. The government would simply like you to disclose when you sell it to someone else at a profit and pay your taxes on it, capital gains tax. And if you wanted to wire $100 million worth of property to someone else, they probably want you to disclose that per the AML, KYC, anti-money laundering.
Can it be owned anonymously?
It can be owned anonymously, except as a practical matter, if you want to acquire large sums of it, you have to acquire them on registered exchanges. So you'd be going to an institutional grade custodian, which is licensed. So what you see, maybe you get to a very important point. the government.
I could maybe mention something here because I had a friend who recently went to buy Bitcoin on a machine, and he was asking me like, I think I got scammed because the machine, first of all, the Bitcoin price is like 20% higher than the actual Bitcoin price, and there's like fees on top of that. So if you do want to get anonymous Bitcoin, you can either through friends or trusted network or machines like that. There are higher costs involved in certain cases, but it is possible. But if you go through an exchange, they're going to ask you for your ID. You're going to have to create an account, show your ID, and be registered with that exchange. So that's something to keep in mind.
Is regulated where it is allowed, and it's allowed everywhere except there's some noise in China. China is a different situation. In the Western world, the regulations are you can hold this as long as you disclose it via a regulated entity. So you're buying it through a registered exchange, and then when you transfer it, you're subject to IRS tax. You have to pay capital gains tax. And
could you conduct anonymous exchanges with it? I mean, I'm just thinking through ways that it would undermine the authority of the government, which, by the way, I'm not against necessarily, but
that's actually the primary issues before Congress and the Senate right now, right? Treasury, if you look at the past week, the Treasury, the SEC, the CFTC, Congress, and the Senate are engaged in a enthusiastic dialogue about what kind of regulations will be applied to the transfer and to the utilization of crypto assets. But the most important, for example, if you issue a crypto asset which looks like a security, like Mikey Coin, if I create Mikey Coin and I keep half of it and I issue the rest and I market it, it looks more like a security or a stock, right? That's going to fall under the jurisdiction of the SEC most likely, right? If it looks like there's a set of crypto assets called stable coins that look like US dollars, the President's Working Committee about a week ago suggested that only FDIC approved banks should issue stable coins. They want anybody issuing stable coins to be FDIC approved, insured, licensed. So there is regulation coming into the space. Ultimately, I think that the security tokens will be under pressure. The stable coins will be treated like money markets in cyberspace, and probably we're rotating from the crypto entrepreneurs to the institutional, publicly traded institutions, large banks, etc. Bitcoin, what it was going to be was a question until 2014 when the IRS designated as property. You're either property or you're currency. In an inflationary environment, money decomposes into currency and into an asset component, or a property component, if you will. The currency is a medium of exchange that you can transmit without incurring a tax obligation.
Right.
Right? I give you $1 million worth of dollars. You hold it for a year. You give it to her. There's no tax bill. It's a stable coin, stable medium of exchange. On the other hand, I give you $1 million of Bitcoin. You hold it for a year. You give $1 million of Bitcoin to her, and if the price doubled, then you owe $500,000. You owe a tax on $500,000 of capital gain. See, or actually, maybe in that case, right? You transferred $1 million of Bitcoin with a basis of 500,000, a capital gain of 500,000. You owe capital gains when you transfer.
But could I make that? And not that I'm a criminal or anything, but I don't know. I don't think everything needs to be monitored by the government. Could I, under the current system, transfer that Bitcoin to someone else without the government knowing?
I think right now in the U.S. and all the institutional custodians I know of, if you go above $10,000, which is the AML limit for most banks, they're required to disclose that. Right. So we're moving to the point where if you're transferring property, like if you wired me $1 million with Apple stock, right, there'd be a tax bill on that.
Oh, for sure.
If you wire me $1 million of Bitcoin through any kind of institutional exchange, there's a tax bill on it.
Is it possible to buy and sell Bitcoin outside of institutional exchanges?
there are peer-to-peer networks, and there's a lot of back and forth over whether or not those are allowed or not allowed, and it varies by jurisdiction. So I think that that's going to get regulated, and it is regulated differently in every jurisdiction. Generally, the scurrying is what's the regulation around tax, transfer, disclosure, anti-money laundering, counterterrorism disclosures, right? Is the disclosure none at all? Is the disclosure above 10,000? Is the disclosure at 600?
Right.
And so all of the sparks are around how much economic freedom, right? And they have different impact. For example,
By the way, could you, when you use the terms terrorism and money laundering, can you use air quotes? Do you mind?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's above my pay grade, Tucker. Right? All above my pay grade.
Yeah, right. Now you got to put
Here's my key point, right? You're a family, you're an institutional investor, you're a corporation, you see inflation. You either buy some land,
yes,
you buy some stocks, you buy a bunch of gold, or you buy Bitcoin. Why would you buy the Bitcoin? Because you want the apex asset.
Exactly.
You don't want the dilution of gold. You don't want the dilution of stocks. You don't want the property tax on property. You don't want the maintenance headache of property. All other forms of property can be impaired, confiscated, inflated away. All other forms of property, right? You have rental buildings in New York City, and there's a rent control, and you can't evict your tenants, and there's a property tax. And it's hard to sell it, and you got to maintain it. And so all other properties, they come with a maintenance cost, they come with the risk. The idea of Bitcoin is digital property. It's digital gold, it's digital property, it's digital money, it's digital energy. The idea is let's create something pure. It's better gold than gold because $1 billion of it is weightless, moves at the speed of light for free, and I can hold it in my head. It's better property than property because there's no maintenance costs and I can't seize it from you. It's better money because for the same reason, it moves at the speed of light, it's programmable. Yeah, try to send money on a Saturday afternoon. Try to send a currency on a Saturday afternoon from a bank here to a bank in France or a bank in Nigeria. Can't do it. Just can't do it. So it's not spoils of war, it's spoils of peace. This is another big idea I want to make. With everything else, if we monetize, if we have a bunch of money, if I give you $1 million and I tell you to go buy stuff with it, and you buy gold jewelry and a house and a car and a whatever, and I want it, I put a gun to your head, give me your stuff, Tucker, and you say no, I shoot you and take your stuff. There's nothing in this world that you can own that I can't take with force, except Bitcoin. Okay? If you take the $1 million and you buy Bitcoin, and you take personal custody of it, and you own the keys password is in your head. I hold the gun to your head, give me your Bitcoin, you can say no. Now, I can still shoot you in the head, but I don't get the property. You see, you can take it. This is the only property in the history of mankind, Tucker, you can take to the grave. The pharaohs wanted to take their gold with them to the grave. They created these pyramids to bury themselves with gold, but grave diggers and grave robbers steal the gold. You can't take anything else with you, but you can.
That's another point that makes me think of what you said earlier, Otter, with the fact that there's Bitcoin that gets lost every year. I think even when I got in like 8 years ago, they estimated like that 4 million Bitcoin were lost initially because of the early days. People mismanaged it. They didn't know how to save it properly. And if people start taking their Bitcoin to the grave, that's going to make the price of Bitcoin go up even higher because it's going to get even more scarce. That's a crazy idea I hadn't thought of too much.
No,
it's part of the magic of Bitcoin. It's the fact that, like, no matter what, the currency is going to air upward. It's only going to get more valuable over time, which means you have more buying power.
No,
I mean, there is eventually a plateau point to where it's like it can't go any higher, but that's a long ways away. And even then, I can only see it stabilizing.
Yeah. I think the gains of the early days. I saw a graph percentage gains. The percentage gains are going down, but the gains are never going down. Like you're always going to increase in value, but of course the early comers had, the advantage of the early adopter. They had way more, but it was crazy back then. I was talking with a friend of mine who was involved with Silk Road. He was working and creating stores in Silk Road at the time, and he got in. It was 88 cents, and it was incredibly volatile during the day. Like from one day to another, you'd have like these 40% volatile moves in a day. So a lot of the people who were buying and selling merchandise through there, they were in a hurry to get rid of the Bitcoin because of how unstable it was. So even if you got in early, there was no guarantee Bitcoin was going to take off. There was no guarantee Bitcoin was going to be what it is today. Today, we have the advantage of knowing, okay, the government's accepted it. SBR, Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, exists. There is a stability in the world in the place of Bitcoin that was not there in the beginning. In the beginning, it was like 100% risk,
Absolutely. That is another thing. It kind of does become more and more stable over time. I'm not going to say that it never kind of like, it is going to fluctuate, of course, but there is going to be a certain level of stability to it as well.
Yeah. I mean, I got in 2017, and then 2018, it fell down like 80, 90%. Like it fell from $20,000 valuation to $3,000 within a year. That's crazy to see your wealth like shrink. And like I started seeing it like a spring because I believed in it back then. Even when it was shrinking, when it got down to $3,000, all I could think of was, well, this is the time to buy more, right? I was sweating. I had a knot in my stomach.
It's weird to see because it's like, it feels like Bitcoin is one of those currencies where nobody believes it until they see it. And then they're like, oh, this is what it's capable of.
Yeah. Yep. It's only when you get into it that you start to understand what it is. You send transactions, you put it on a hardware wallet, software wallet, and then you start understanding a bit more. That's why the main meme is not go out. We're not saying, hey, everybody go out and buy Bitcoin. Because if you do that, the chances are you'll just switch to a shitcoin next week and you'll lose everything. The meme is go and study Bitcoin. That's what we're doing here today. That's the kind of the goal of this stream here. It's to understand what it is, how it works, why it works. Because when you have a good understanding of what it is, then you can see the value. And when you experience volatility, you understand that the value is not going down. It's just the market price at the current evaluation that's gone down. But Bitcoin is as valuable as ever, if not more. And you understand, okay, this is a good time to accumulate more. Like I could put down $100 and get more Bitcoin than I could yesterday because the price went down. So I can increase my stack a little bit more there.
Take the password in your head. Why is that significant? Well, you study the history of the Jews in the 30s in Nazi Germany, and most of them left with, if they were lucky, 10% of their assets. They would have left with all their assets if their assets were in Bitcoin. They couldn't move their house. They can't move a building. You can't haul the gold. Maybe you try to smuggle diamonds, not very good store of value. It's the history of every diaspora, every people. When you leave, when the Jews got driven out of Spain in 1500, during the Inquisition, it was all over property, right? They're stealing their property. So what are property rights? Property rights is you can own stuff and no one can take it away from you. I had $1 million in a bank in Argentina 20 years ago. It was in US dollars. The peso was 1 to the dollar. The Argentine government sent a memo to the banks, forcibly converted everybody's dollars to pesos, and then forcibly devalued the peso 10 for 1. And I woke up the next morning and I had $100,000. I had $1 million the day before. They stole 90% of all the currency from everybody in the country overnight on a fax. without a law, without an army. Now, how hard would it be to take all of the property or of everybody in the country with Bitcoin? You have to go arrest 60 million people, sweat them all in a jail for 90 days. How do you arrest 60 million people and sweat them in jail for 90 days? It's like 1 billion times harder. So Bitcoin is property rights, properly understood. And that is an important economic empowerment. It's a protection of individual liberties. It's John Locke's dream, life, liberty, and property. You know, go west, young man. Why people come to America? Because if you were Catholic in Northern Europe, they took your land and property. If you're Protestant in Southern Europe, they took your land and property. If you're a Jewish person everywhere, they're always taking your land and property. Everybody went to America so that they could actually have freedom and have property, and no one would take it at the point of a gun, and they kept moving west. Bitcoin is moving your property into cyberspace, where it's protected by a wall of encrypted energy against those that would do you harm. And because it's the hardest to tax, and it's the hardest to steal, and it's the hardest to confiscate, it's, you know, it makes it the last thing in the world you're going to attack, the path of least resistance. Right? When it's time for me to tax property in California, I'm going to put a tax on the building. Buildings don't move. If I put a 2% tax on the Bitcoin's moving to Wyoming. If I put a 2% tax in Wyoming, it's moving to whatever state in the union they didn't tax it. And when the entire country taxes it, it's moving to Monaco. And if everybody, you know, in Monaco taxes it, I can sell it to someone in China, right? It's universally desirable, scarce property, hard to steal. You can sell it, you can put a lien on it, you can mortgage it, you can develop it, you can protect it. And if your choice was take all your money and invest it in buildings in the city of your choice, or invest it in a company or securities, or invest it in collectibles, all those things are subject to expropriation, confiscation, inflation, taxation. This is the first time we kind of solved the problem. So, you know, does it make sense? As long as it's secure and can't be copied, and we had to wait 12 years, 10,000 times people tried to copy it, they all failed, right? Was it hacked? No. Will it be banned? Well, here's the thing that's happened in the last 12 months, Tucker. The IRS said it's property. It's important for it to be property, not currency. Currency is the provenance of the government, right? Every powerful government will have a currency. Every weak government will have a collapsing currency, and every failed government will lose their currency privileges. Hence, 66 countries dollarize. There's going to be collapse. 100 countries will probably lose their currency privileges. Eventually, you got the CNY, the USD, a few powerful second-level currencies, and then name one currency in Africa that you would rather hold than the dollar. There's just one. Name one currency in South America you'd rather hold than the dollar. There isn't one. Why hasn't the dollar spread to everybody's iPhone and Android phone? They're waiting for the crypto rails, right? At the point that I can download a mobile app, load it up with $87, every other currency in the world starts to collapse into the US dollar, assuming the United States embraces it. So why has the United States embraced it? The United States has embraced it. Why has the Chinese nation been a bit skittish about it? Well, China's got a wall, and behind that wall, they have capital controls. They don't want capital to flow freely. A Chinese citizen can't take $1 million out of China. They just can't. Behind that wall, they block Google, they block Facebook, they block Twitter, they block the free flow of capital. That's how they control their system. They print Chinese currency. If there was a free flow of capital, all the current capital would leave China. They'd have a problem. So they've got their system. And in the West, we've got a Western system where we allow Google and Twitter and Facebook. And the Western system is based on the English language, Western values, generally Western law, US dollar, Bitcoin, right? In the last year, the US has embraced Bitcoin. The Chinese have rejected Bitcoin. At this point, you have Jerome Powell saying, this is an asset. It's not a currency. It's an asset. You have Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, saying this is an asset. It's a scarce speculative asset. They say it's speculative. Of course it's speculative. right? If it wasn't speculative, then $100 trillion would flow into it. It would have grown by a factor of 100 by now. I mean, there has to be some risk. It's a speculative store of value. Christina Lagarde says it's an asset. Even the bankers, when they're criticizing, quote unquote, they say it's not a currency, it's not a medium of exchange. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't need to be a medium of exchange. You don't need it. You don't need to replace the US dollar in the Western world to fix things. What you need to do is give people a savings account. I want to hold 1 month of my salary in dollars. I want to store everything else for the next 10 years or 100 years in an asset which is going up in value. So if you look at what's happened, the administration's in favor of this. This is a broadly bipartisan thing. Cynthia Lummis stood up on the floor of the Senate and said, thank God for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is sound money. It's sound money to the right. It's sound money to the left. Who doesn't want to economically empower everybody on Earth, right? It's good for everybody in the world. There's broad support in the Senate. There's bipartisan support in the Senate and broad support in the House. There's broad support in the administration. People were a bit confused that it might be a currency and it was going to replace the dollar. And if so, then that's an existential problem. But once you take that turn, you say, this is not a problem for the dollar. This is us replacing the foundation of the economy that currently rests on other fiat assets, which are imperfect and inefficient.
So another thing that we're seeing here is with the strategic Bitcoin reserve that Trump is implementing, you can see the dollar eventually going to be backed by Bitcoin, which is going to be interesting. So instead of having the currency disappear, if you have it backed by Bitcoin, people are going to continue using the dollar with no issue, because there's people who just don't have the technological know-how and capabilities to easily start working with Bitcoin. But if you can save them by having the government back it by Bitcoin, you save the value of the dollar. And that's an interesting thing that no one had seen coming, pretty much, but that might turn out to happen.
I honestly see it happening. I think it's next to an inevitability, with Bitcoin steadily becoming more and more valuable, more and more stable. Unless there's like a major crash that happens, like I just see it becoming like the replacement for the petrodollar, because the petrodollar is not stable in the slightest.
Yeah. And we're seeing interest right now, like Apple's considering it. Microsoft just turned it down. It's probably going to be the biggest mistake of the history of the company. But like you have Apple is huge financially. And at the same time, you have countries. I think 48 states have like some form of law that's currently in the works to add Bitcoin to their reserve as well. So if you have the country at the federal level and you have the individual states competing to acquire Bitcoin, and Bitcoin gets rarer and rarer, that just means one thing. It just means the price goes up and people's purchasing power continues to climb.
Absolutely.
Right? The first thing that collapses is gold. Gold has been collapsing for a decade. Gold's down 4% in the most inflationary year of our business career. It's down 4%. Bitcoin's up 340%, Tucker.
What's Bitcoin trading at right now?
66,000, 67,000.
Last question. If you had to call it, how high do you think in the next 5 years Bitcoin could get? This is per coin, by the way.
Bitcoin's going up forever because it's a cap supply of 21 million, and it's going to go up because of inflation. Right, we're going to increase the supply of dollars, and Bitcoin's going to be fixed, so in dollars it goes up. It's going to go up because of technical utility. We're going to build it into iPhones and Android phones and put it into every computer and move it at the speed of light and build it into Twitter and Square and PayPal and the like. So that'll cause it to go up. It's going to go up for adoption because of it.
Quick note, really, I won't be too quick on this, but too long on this, but he says build it into Twitter. There's a parallel Twitter called NOSTR where Bitcoin is already built into that. It's kind of a bunch of Bitcoiners who wanted to create a censorship-resistant version of Twitter, and you can what's called zap people some Bitcoin. So you can either send a like, hey, I like your post, or you can, if you really like it, you can zap them what's called Satoshis, which are a fraction of a Bitcoin. You can send fractions of a penny if you want, or you can send as much as you want as well on top of that. So that already exists in a parallel network to Twitter.
I believe a Satoshi is like 1/10,000th of a Bitcoin, if I'm thinking right.
I think it's 100,000th.
Oh, okay. Even more so.
Yeah, it's very small. We're like, I think $1 buys you less than 1,000 Satoshis now. I think it's either 900 or 800 or something. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not I'm not that good at math or that up to date on the exact prices, but if you do the math, it's pretty much around that now. It used to be like $1 would get you 2,000 Satoshis, but we've been under that for a long time. So it's just going to get lower and lower, the amount of Satoshis you can get.
Adoption, more and more people are going to bring their money. And it's not like Facebook. It's not like when Rupert Murdoch showed up at Facebook, he didn't bring 1 billion friends. When a billionaire joins a monetary network, they bring $1 billion. So when 100 billionaires show up, they bring hundreds of billions of dollars. When companies, when institutional investors show up, they bring massive amounts of capital. So it will keep going up with adoption, utility, and inflation. And eventually, it will replace gold, which is $10 trillion asset. Bitcoin's like a 1.2. It'll go by a factor of 10. And in 3 to 5 years, it'll certainly replace gold. Then it will replace indexes, right? The S&P index or bond indexes. It'll start to demonetize fixed income and equity indexes that are used as a store of value. Because that's right now, people, they want to save their money for a long period of time. They use that. And gradually, it'll demonetize property. Like, in Canada, they got a housing shortage because foreigners go and they buy the houses, as an investment, and the locals can't afford a house.
Yeah, I've noticed.
Same problem in the US.
Yes.
We're monetizing houses. That is to say, if I print infinite money, the price of I go and I buy something tangible with the money before it devalues. The problem is people that are starting their career that need to buy a house can't afford to buy it. So you don't want to monetize something with utility.
Exactly.
You monetize food, everybody starves. You monetize houses, everybody's out on the street.
Right.
So what Bitcoin is doing is it's demonetizing commercial and residential real estate.
So if you were to shut down, if the U.S. government decided no more Bitcoin, what would happen to residential real estate markets?
Well, I mean, if Bitcoin went away, then the other monetary assets would monetize a bit more.
Right.
But Bitcoin is 1 trillion out of 500 trillion and stuff out there. So it's still less than 1%. But, gold would get a slight boost. Gold is really being, why is it gold didn't go up 34%? Gold underperformed the S&P index in a year of political unrest and massive rampant inflation. It's the 1 year in 40 years gold should have gone up in price. Why? Because everyone looking for a non-sovereign store of value grabbed the crypto gold. Right? They occupy the same niche, non-sovereign sound money store of value, not related to cash flows, can't be mucked with. But the problem is gold can be corrupted. Gold is corrupted by gold miners and gold brokers and gold dealers. Bitcoin can't be corrupted in that way because you can take possession of your own Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners can't make anymore. So people say Bitcoin is fixing things, right? Fix the money, fix the world. Bitcoin is gradually demonetizing these other assets. And the idea is to return rationality, to make things more rational, right? If people start buying Bitcoin instead of buying a second investment property, the price of property will go down for people that want a first home.
Yes.
That's the idea. If people start buying Bitcoin instead of bonds, the price of bonds will come down, the yield will come up.
Exactly.
And if you want risk-free yield, you'll be able to buy that yield. Used to be $1 million got you a bond that paid you $50,000 a year. Now you need $20 million or $10 million to get a bond that pays $50,000 a year. Your retirement just went from costing you $1 million to costing you $10 million. So Bitcoin is demonetizing some of these other assets. And the stock market, all these meme stocks, these are all symptoms of too much money, right? And the sky high P to E ratios. So the big picture, the big idea here, Tucker, is the average American, the average wage earner is forced to take their life savings and gamble it in the stock market in order to avoid losing their life savings. My 83-year-old father has to guess which stock is going to go up this week and whether it's Exxon is better than British Petroleum or better than Apple or not so good as Google in order to not lose his life savings. Because if he puts it into the bank, he gets paid 0.1% interest and it loses 25% of its purchasing power a year. And people aren't stupid. They know that things are going up faster than 2% a year or 4% a year or 5% a year. So we're stampeding an entire generation into either, at best, investing in stocks, or at worst, gambling with meme stocks and gambling with crypto random dog coins, because no one has a savings account they trust. Bitcoin is a bank in cyberspace offering a savings account. You're not gambling on the next product release of Apple versus Google and whether Amazon will get unionized and whether, you know, this pipeline will get approved. And that's not right. And if you put all your money in the S&P index, all the CEOs print more stock and dilute your money. So you don't have to do that. All you're buying is you're buying 1/21 millionth of the monetary energy in the network forever. The product of Bitcoin is just, you're going to buy a bit of money and hold it forever, and that's the product. And it's a very simple product, should last for 10,000 years.
You sold me. I'm taking all my pallets of 7.62 ammo and converting them. That was the single most interesting explanation of economics I've heard maybe ever.
You're too kind.
That's
Thank you.
true.
Bitcoiners, I mean, the entire subject is fascinating because I think you'd love it if you get more into it, because it's Austrian economics, plus it's technology, plus it's political theory, plus it's philosophy, plus it's, you know, there are elements of human rights in it. The entire Bitcoin coalition, you have people on one side, Jack Dorsey, they see it as economic empowerment for billions of people. You have people on the other side that see it that are rampant Austrian economists. They're the freedom fighters, the John Locke's, right, of the world, and the property rights people, the libertarians, and then the engineers.
I just like the idea of
Altogether.
a stable store of value that can't be messed with.
Everyone's looking for that. That's the foundation upon which you build your life.
Of course.
Right? Build on granite with steel. So Bitcoin is crypto steel. It's like a steel ship, a wooden ship, a balsa ship. You know, like
I'll take the steel.
That's the idea, and we didn't have it for 1,000 years, right? We never had it before. Like it's before. You have to build with crumbling sand on swamps. It's just, you're building on stuff that's sinking underneath you. And what causes so much passion, right? What causes people to, you know, be willing to do anything to make this successful is this thought that we finally found something true and beautiful with integrity that gives us control of our life back in a world where we feel like we've lost control to politicians, we've lost control to circumstances, and everyone's looking for some way, something they can believe in that's truly theirs.
And that's it. That was it. That was Michael Saylor on Tucker Carlson. That was a few years ago. Bitcoin was 60,000, I think he said during the talk. And now it's 100 something. I can have a look at the current price.
What an interview.
Yeah, that one was legendary.
They really started taking it serious on a wider scale as soon as the government said they want to tax it.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Say that again.
Or aren't they, when they started, I think people started taking it serious when like they started looking into, hey, how can we tax people on this? That kind of really got the most eyes on it.
Correct. So when they, what is it? The SCC decided it was in property and not currency. That was the definition people were waiting on. That guarantees that, like you say, it could be taxed. Like I think it's over $10,000 or something. I'm not a tax attorney. You can contact your own tax attorney, but you can see that this changes the game for everything. And Bitcoiners, like, they get the Bitcoin fever. They want to get as much as they can. They see the value of it, the scarcity of it, and it's almost like a race to acquire as much. Michael Saylor, he says it's like discovering Manhattan in the early days. Like, you want to get as much of the property on that island as you can because it's only going to go up in value. And I think the idea of this stream here is trying to get artists who aren't necessarily in a good, stable financial position to get in on this as early as possible, so that they have a good foundation. They can build for their future. They can finance their dreams and realize what they want to realize within their lives. And as you say, Otter, like, have even generational wealth that they can leave to your children, grandchildren, and your dynasty eventually down the line, you know. It's not out of question. It wasn't popular. It wasn't possible before. Now you can actually discuss these types of things in a realistic manner. And most people don't even have savings, let alone.
One of the nice things is it brings the buying power back to you, which is that's really the big appeal.
Yep.
Like, there's no mediator, there's no borders or anything like that.
Yeah, and whereas the dollar encourages you to spend as quickly as possible, to invest in assets and to, you know, try to increase that wealth, Bitcoin actually encourages you to save it. Like, you are encouraged to just sit on it and be Bitcoin. There's a saying in Bitcoin. Well, there's some people that say never sell your Bitcoin. That's not a bad suggestion, but a more realistic one is you spend your Bitcoin when you have to buy something that will positively change your life and affect your life.
I think it brings out the min-maxer in you. Also a bit of a cheapskate in you, but that I still consider that a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You don't spend on stuff that you're going to regret later. Because if you look at something that's in the corner of your room that's gaining dust, you're going to start asking questions like, how much would Bitcoin would I have gotten for that? And how much would that Bitcoin be worth now if I had bought that back at the same time that I bought this thing? There's a website that's in just that. Like, it gives you items like a PlayStation, an Xbox, this, that, everything that you could find in your household. And it tells you exactly how much Bitcoin you would have gotten and how much it would be worth today. And it hurts.
My theory is that along with bringing buying power back, it'll also help with efficiency, because Bitcoin is kind of anti-consumerist in a little, like, how do I put this? It's anti-hyper-consumerist.
Yeah.
Where you are encouraged to spend, but you're not encouraged to overspend, because it's always wiser to hodl, see the value of your own money go up, and then spend modestly.
Yep. And if you want to geek out in economic terms, because we all know Keynesian economic, even though you don't know the term, the economy we're living in, everything that's taught in school is Keynesian. And Bitcoin goes back to sound money principles, which are Austrian economics. So if you want to have a deep dive into geeky economic stuff, you can dive into those topics. It's always a fun thing. Of course, you know, there's always a danger with Bitcoin.
Well, if Bitcoin will become the ultimate type of a form of the currency been adopted by human society, I can tell exactly what's going to happen as the worst scenario, or the must scenario. We're all going to die. This is not a joke.
That's the Chinese threatening everybody. If you get Bitcoin, we're all going to die.
It's so terrible.
Okay, we're nearing the end of the show. I got a couple of clips here I can show before we close out.
In Bhutan, gold is everywhere, a Buddhist symbol of the everlasting nature of enlightenment. Now, this small Himalayan kingdom is investing in a future it hopes will be blessed with what backers call digital gold, Bitcoin. It's also finite and supposedly everlasting.
There are hundreds of people who have made billions of dollars on the back of Bitcoin. Why aren't governments doing more? Even if there seem to be
Prime Minister's chairing Topgay says Bitcoin is a strategic reserve, one currently worth more than $1 billion.
We have used Bitcoin for health, to provide free healthcare, for our environment, but these are minor. The main use of Bitcoin has been to finance the salaries of public servants.
Bhutan has built Bitcoin mines at locations across the country where thousands of energy-hungry computers solve complex mathematical puzzles to claim Bitcoins. And here's what's powering this modern-day gold rush: hydro-generated electricity. The government says its Bitcoin operation is carbon neutral. It relies only on water from the Himalayas. It's also very profitable, with Bhutan's computers being rewarded with Bitcoins that at current prices add up to millions of dollars a week. Bhutan is a small country. Large-scale manufacturing and agriculture aren't possible, almost all food is imported, and options for economic development are limited.
I would be very worried if our government was buying Bitcoin, in trading in Bitcoin, but I think the kind of reassurance for us Bhutanese citizens is that the government is mining it. We are using the cheap hydropower, and instead of exporting it at a very cheap rate, we are using it to mine Bitcoins in the high mountains of Bhutan.
Whatever I require for the chief executive of Bhutan's sovereign holding company says exploiting Bitcoin and other new technologies is vital to economic development.
I think you cannot run away from blockchain, cannot run away from AI, how blockchain and AI will combine the industry of money, if I may say, and how money flows from one hand to another, because it's one of the biggest innovation in the space of money for humanity from the time we remember where money was discovered or invented.
Will the Bhutanese one day be making Bitcoin offerings to Buddha? The Prime Minister thinks the world is heading inevitably towards using and exchanging Bitcoin just like any other currency. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Thimphu, Bhutan.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's churches where mining Bitcoin as well. Anyone who has access to cheap electricity, it's a good option to have.
I just learned that Bhutan is based as fuck right now.
Right? Well, I've got another clip here. I'm not sure which one this is. I've got to rename it. Let's try it out.
I'm looking for a man in Bitcoin, no chairs. 615 laser eyes. 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 Laser, 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 laser eyes. Laser, 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 laser. Bitcoin, no chairs. 615 laser eyes. 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 Laser, 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 laser. I'm looking for a man in.
Yeah, that's an intense concentration of memes right there.
That was a ton of little Easter eggs and facts about Bitcoin just condensed and
What?
hid from you.
What is the significance of no chairs?
Okay, so that's the interesting thing. So it's kind of the idea that when you understand what Bitcoin is, you're going to liquidate all your other assets, right? So like your 401k is not going to be worth as much. Your stocks are much more riskier, that you don't get as much gains. So the idea is to just
Stock
basically,
being risky. Now I've heard everything.
yeah. And the thing
It's
is,
easy. Just look at what Nancy Pelosi does and copy that.
when you extrapolate that thinking to the extreme, it's like, well, why do you even need chairs? If you're a real Bitcoiner, you don't even need chairs at your house. You're going to sell all your chairs for Bitcoin and just live in an empty space. So it's just the extreme, it's a meme, right? So no one actually acts like that, but that's the meme. The laser eyes was a meme that came up on Twitter, I believe. It was the idea that it was like 5 years ago, people were saying we're going to add laser eyes to our avatars until Bitcoin reaches 100K. And back then it was like, what, 20, 30, maybe 40K. And it went up to 69 that year. I think that was the top. And then we had another 4-year cycle before we saw 100K. Some people held the laser eyes on their avatars for the whole 4 years. And it's the, long-time perspective of Bitcoiners.
I want laser eyes, not necessarily as an avatar to join a trend. I just think it'd be cool to have laser eyes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I would normally wish for laser eyes, but that's implying I don't already have laser eyes.
Who knows the strange biology of these otters?
I've got another mystery clip here. Let's play it and see what it is.
Yeah, I mean, just there's no intrinsic value to this asset, and now it's starting to be priced appropriately. So it has what's Bitcoin at 16,000. It has another 17,000 to go down. Duh. Really? Yeah. There's no intrinsic value to this product.
Yeah, and on that note, everybody, thanks for watching all the way to the end. Thank you, Otter and Wrangler, for being here on the first installment of Bullish Bullpen. These will be kind of spontaneous. I have no schedule for these, whenever I'm sitting down to draw on the table, mostly during the days, but it could happen anytime. So subscribe to my Twitter, subscribe to my NOSTR YouTube channel. All the information is in the video description. And we'll wish you adieu. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
God bless everybody.
God bless